What is going on, Rotogrinders? Dean here, Dean78904. That is the Yahoo handle around the industry. It is 10:30 on the East Coast, 7:30. What up, West Coast? 7:30 in the morning out there, and it's 9:30 Tennessee time. So, of course, it's time of the flagship show here at Rotogrinders. It is called Grinderslive. Joining me today, it is the same crew as always. We're super, super excited to talk about this absolutely amazing slate.
It's trash.
Hi, Grant. Yeah, it's man, it's trash for everybody. We're all dealing with the same trash. There's a bunch of big favorites. There's not one total, I believe, over 47, I want to say, at this point. Of course, we're down to 9 games as opposed to the 11. Hi, Grant. How are things out there in Colorado? And yeah, this is is there anything you like in this slate? There's some things you like more or hate less than other things, I suppose. But and we're gonna figure it out. And there's still angles to work, obviously. And there's some weird chalk. Just if I just told you that, like, a running back for the Jaguars, like one of the worst teams in football.
I mean, that's happened a lot of times, and he also crushed the entirety of last year. That's the one chalk on this slate outside of Murray that really, really makes sense.
It makes sense. Well, also because of the rest of the slate. Like we've had in previous.
I don't care if the slate was normal. Like, James Robinson would still be a good play.
I guess. I mean, Carlos Hyde's gone, and they got rid of their dopey coach and Urban Meyer. But and they were favorites. The Jaguars were like 4-point favorites or so at home to Houston, and we'll talk about it. And there's also ways to get around that. The leverage plays, potentially going to the passing game, things like that. And like Harris is the highest projected running back, a guy that's just sort of like fine. But yeah, it's a weird one. Andre, what are your thoughts as far as of course we're going to break it down game by game, not game by game, position by position, and talk all the angles, everything we kind of work in here. This is the start of 2.5 hours of RG coverage, taking you guys all the way up the lock. We got I think Noto's following us, filling in, I believe, with Ben, and then of course the Crunch Time crew. Yeah, Noto's going to be on the show next. You want to say something for that for sure? That guy. Yeah, he's a good dude. Andre, what are your thoughts here? What are we looking at? You would agree with myself and Grant that this is kind of a stinky slate, but we're gonna do the old chicken salad thing.
Oh yeah,
he's gonna try to.
It's not that great of a slate. I'm just gonna try to navigate as best I can, and hopefully have some good plays and good lineups that's gonna make it to the top today.
Yeah, just got to give it the old scroll through. Yeah, 47.5 as far as the total for San Francisco. 48.5 is the Arizona-Detroit game. We're expecting Edmonds to be back. We're expecting Pollard to be playing today. The report was he's expected to get a couple dozen snaps. Well, what's that, Grant? Like, is that 24 to 36?
24 to 36.
Yeah, I don't know if they were talking Baker or just general dozen, but yeah. All right, that's
and I know you're going to make that joke.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know I was going to make that, and I it's a really loose interpretation.
I mean, the reason is because I would also make that joke.
Oh well, all right. So I thought was that like a slam on me, or is it like? I mean, it wasn't a good joke. If it was a joke, it wasn't good.
No, it was terrible. But I would have done the same thing.
What are you saying about yourself? What are you revealing about yourself?
That we are both idiots.
Later we have Lamar, who's currently highly questionable. He's playing in the later game, and we're suspecting, our lean is Schefter, kind of like his tweets imply that he's probably not going to play, but he wants to give it a go. I guess he's never missed a game before due to injury, which that was kind of surprising.
Yeah,
he's had a couple, I think, where he had
only missed
illness.
games due to the poops.
Yeah, well, no, mid-game. He started that game, but he had
but he missed one 2 weeks ago because of the poops.
Say it again?
The poops.
Is that the technical? Is that the term they use?
I am a certified doctor in my own mind.
Oh man. So the other part of this, Grant, and we'll talk about it as far as all the potential pivots, potential salary savers. Like salary matters, obviously, but there's also there's not a lot of players you necessarily want to pay up for. You know, no Cooper Kupp on this slate, no Tampa on this slate, no
Adams.
Chiefs on this slate. Well, Adams, yes, and
Kyler,
and then
and
yes.
There's exactly one player to pay up for at pretty much every position. That's going to be super chalk.
So is that you're supposed to do, or no? You probably shouldn't do that.
Oh, Adams, but yeah, Kyler, like quarterbacks are never really that chalky. Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and dive in and break it down? As far as position by position, we'll start with the quarterback position, and because of the fact that we have the salary to do it. There are two main quarterbacks, I guess you can say, on this 9-gamer. I think that's where the tier starts is Kyler Murray in Detroit in a dome. Awesome matchup, big team total. And then you got Josh Allen. He basically is that offense. I know there was like a walking boot speculation, and there was apparently he had a full practice, and I suppose he's good to go. The props, Grant, you probably looked at this as well, I imagine. They don't love him. When I was looking at there, and his passing total over under, I saw a prize picks at 250 or 251.
260.5 on gambling sites.
Yeah, maybe it's moved, or that still seems, and to me, I thought that seemed kind of low. I feel like that's in the low end.
A lot of his upside is from his running game. 260.5
sure.
is pretty much like he's hit it roughly half the times this year.
So are you flipping a coin? What are you doing? How are you figuring out who you prefer amongst Kyler Murray and Josh Allen? And do you agree those are the two, there's a tier after that of Dak and maybe Rodgers, maybe Tua, Lamar if he plays, something like that. But it's Murray and Allen and then everybody else, right? I think.
I don't even like Allen today. It's being played in Buffalo. He doesn't do great in Buffalo. Carolina's a tough pass defense. This game could very easily be low scoring. I'm kind of on the fade or Josh Allen train. Kyler Murray is a guy that I'm still going to play. It's going up against Detroit. If you're not playing him, then you pretty much have to play either Edmonds or Connor. That's just how it works. Points are going to be scored. Yes, it could be very spread out, but if you're not playing Kyler, then that means in all likelihood, Connor or Edmonds or both had a serviceable game, or they had a great game. That's the only two options, unless somehow Detroit holds them to no points, which I don't see happening. After that, the chalk is super interesting. Tua, why? I get it's the Jets, but why? Dak.
Well, that's why it's against the Jets, and he's got a nice price, and he's got easy pairing partners too.
Yeah,
a condensed receiving rotation.
Yeah, Dak's not been great in recent weeks. They're probably going to blow him out. They're probably going to run the ball. Why would we go Dak? Jimmy, I don't see that one. Those are the 5 guys that are projected for around or over 10% ownership. And I do not understand it in the slightest going with them. I know why people will, but it's just not a good idea, because the difference between Tua, Dak, and Jimmy compared to Rodgers, Bridgewater, Roethlisberger, even Matt Ryan, Joe Burrow, Tannehill, Zach Wilson, Cam Newton. There's not a huge difference.
Wait, Zach Wilson? What just happened there?
There's not a big difference between them and Zach Wilson. But you're also getting Zach Wilson at 1.5%.
Andre, is Zach Wilson cracking your quarterback pool today?
No.
I'm playing some Zach Wilson.
Almost got lightheaded when you mentioned Zach Wilson.
I don't like him, but I'm saying there's not a drastic difference.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't play him though against Miami. They're actually I think Miami is actually a pretty solid defense, and I expect Zach to get lit up today.
I'm not advocating for playing Zach Wilson, but I do think there's a pretty good shot he outscores at least one of Tua, Dak, or Jimmy.
He doesn't know. I don't think anyone.
Trevor Lawrence
is
4 times the ownership of Zach Wilson. Statistically, they've been pretty darn similar this year.
I get what you're saying, and I understand that, but this is the difference when it comes to the opponent that you're playing, and I think that comes plays a obviously a drastic role into it. I just think that Zach Wilson, I mean, he's been playing a lot better since he's come back into the starting position at quarterback. I give him that because he's been checking down a lot and playing more, just like managing the game and getting the ball up the field. But I just can't see it. I can't see
I'm
it.
not saying play Zach Wilson. That we're not arguing that.
Why did you mention his name then? Why even bring him up?
Did you listen to the conversation? There's not much of a difference between him, Tua, Dak, and Garoppolo.
Oh yeah, but he's not scoring. This week he's not scoring higher than any of those quarterbacks. That was my point. He's not.
He will score higher than one of those quarterbacks.
But even if he does, then what? He scores 16 points. I'm
not saying play Zach Wilson. Stop saying that's the point. I'm saying there's not a huge difference. This is not about playing Zach Wilson. This is about don't play Tua, don't play Dak, don't play Josh Allen, don't play Garoppolo.
Well, tell me who I'm supposed to play, because we acknowledge that there are a lot of bad plays, but you can't just say they're all bad. You have to.
I gave you a list Fanduel, of every other quarterback.
Well, where are you going to end up? Like, if you're going to kind of divvy up your top three, who's on the podium for you? Most heavily young quarterbacks as of right now.
Kyler is number one. He's the one guy that I'm willing to eat the chalk on. Rodgers is number two. Then it's just a spattering of Bridgewater, Matt Ryan, Joe Burrow, mostly, and a little bit of Tannehill.
How about yourself, Andre? Where do you stand? And feel free to give your thoughts as far as Murray versus Allen. Do you have a take? Or are you basically, getting a big percentage of both? Are you with the field? On Fanduel, we're looking at almost 24% for Murray, 22% for Allen. Big numbers. But again, you have the salary. You're not spending on a lot elsewhere anyway. DK, we're looking at 17% for Murray, 15% for Allen as far as their ownership projections. Then Tua and Dak in the low double digits. Garoppolo right behind him. Rodgers as well. Lawrence at 5%. Andre, where are you gravitating to? Clearly, it's not a Jets quarterback, but who do you like?
Well, yeah, I agree with what Grant said about the the difference between Allen and Murray, and I'm playing Josh Allen today, but I'm not gonna have that much of him. The past couple, besides the game against against the Tampa Bay where they pushed him, I think he really hasn't had that great of a game against outside of New Orleans. But I feel like you have to push him to play that way, and I don't think Carolina could do that. I don't think they can keep up. I think that they're going to try to, but with Cam Newton and the quarterback situation being that they're using both Cam Newton and Walker, I don't see them pushing Josh Allen to have to throw the ball that much. So I'm not as high on Josh Allen as I am on Kyler Murray, who can pretty much, without DeAndre Hopkins, we know Detroit, they're down, I think, a couple corners, I think, on defense now too. I think someone else got rolled out this morning. But I just think Kyler Murray can have he I remember, I think a couple of weeks ago, someone said on the show earlier this week that I think he was a QB1 on 15 passes, and against Chicago it was 30 fantasy points. That's crazy, and because obviously he has a rushing upside with the floor, which is a high floor right there, and then a passing upside which he could throw two or three touchdowns too as well. So I like that, especially with the running back situation. I think it could be used a little bit as leverage too off of them, because I'm assuming one of those running backs are going to be chalky because it's obviously going against Detroit. But I prefer Kyler today for sure. And when it comes to the other quarterbacks, I understand the Dak call. I'm going to have a little bit of Dak. It's just that, especially in the divisional match against the Giants, he played well against them the first time. But 6,500, I'd rather go down personally a little bit and get a guy like Person Jimmy, who I think is a good play today. Tua is not a bad play either around that same price point, just because he's going against the Jets and going to be able to have Devontae Parker as a number one target, along with Gaskin out the backfield to catch a couple passes and run the ball. I love getting to Joe Burrow. Obviously, it's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league in general, and I play him every week. But in tournaments today, I was looking before, he's not getting as owned as any of these other quarterbacks, but his wide receivers have probably some of the best matchups this week on the slate. I'll take that all day, and I'll take that all day from our wide receiver wide receiver cornerback chart matchup that if you look at that, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins have two of the best matchups on the board today against the corners for Denver. So to me, I'll take that all day and just pair it with Joe Burrow and just hope that they just throw the ball all day and get like 3 or 4 touchdowns and he has an upside day. And obviously the best quarterback on the slate to play probably would be Aaron Rodgers, but we also don't know how much he's going to be pushed now too, because if Huntley's there, that'll just make the game probably slow down a little bit more. I can see them obviously throwing still a lot to try to keep up, but I can see this game getting to a point where they're just give AJ Dillon or Aaron Jones the ball like 20 times and just have him run the ball down the field to eat the clock out a lot. So yeah, that's my player pool quarterbacks besides Trevor Lawrence, who I think is a phenomenal play. I think the narrative street also is there a little bit too with them getting away with them firing their coach. So I think that the team as a whole might want to have something to prove. So I like Trevor Lawrence today in tournaments and trying to get over the field with him for sure.
What about the other quarterback in that game?
Oh, Davis Mills. I'm not as high on Davis Mills. I'm going to look into it now that when you brought it up. I was trying to get a chance to look into him and writing some things down because like his last showing was not bad. Like if they're going to pass the ball 50 times and he's going to eventually get to over 300 yards passing and he's going to have a couple touchdowns, I don't need that much out of him. Like he had 18 fantasy points. So like I'd rather play Davis Mills over Zach Wilson for sure. And
He's had one of the toughest schedules of any quarterback.
And I agree with that. And he played well. And the thing about this is he played well against a good defense too in the Patriots in the past. So like to me that shows that he has some talent. He's not a bad quarterback. And they invested a high draft pick on him too. So I don't mind getting to him in tournaments. He's not going to be hardly owned at all, like 1%. I'd rather play him over Zach Wilson for sure. That I know.
I would too.
And
honestly, the more I look into it, he's played Arizona, he's played Indy, he's played the Patriots, he's played Buffalo, he's played Carolina. Like the only other games where he wasn't playing a top 5 defense is that I can't remember if that was the Rams or Chargers they just destroyed. Seattle, who's played, huh?
Yeah, he played well against the Rams. That's the thing. Like he played in games he had no business playing well against these top defenses. He actually performed well.
Yeah, he did well against the Seahawks. He did well against the Rams. He did well against the Patriots. Like he's done well in a lot of situations. And the biggest thing, they don't want to run the ball with David Johnson or Freeman. Like they are going to pass the ball close to 50 times. We know that it's going to Cooks. Like Davis Mills, the more I look into it, sets up as one of the better plays on the slate.
And now I'm going to play some Davis Mills because Grant has talked me into it.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything about Davis Mills for the record. Grant, I don't, I'm guilty by association. He's fine, I guess, but I'm not playing much Davis Mills. And the other part of that, Grant, is like, what does that get you? Like, okay, now the salaries open up, and I can play who? Who does it open up for me?
Devontae Adams.
I can already get him. That's not hard. I mean, you know,
Najee Harris.
Yeah,
Zeke,
I mean, it's not
getting leverage off the deck. Chalk. Javonte Williams.
Chalky.
Joe Mixon, who's been crushing it, who's been one of the top running backs in the league. Cordero Patterson, who's going to be at 5% ownership. Like you can get off the Devontae Parker and Christian Kirk and Cole Beasley's chalk and go with a guy like Deebo Samuels, Stephon Diggs, Deontay Johnson. There are guys to pay up for.
We'll talk about Deebo soon. That's such a tricky one. But the Kyler thing, I think it's worth noting. Since coming back, he's had his 2 biggest rushing games of the season, and the back-to-back games. It's coming back from his injury. You know, as far as lifting that floor, I did think it was interesting what you said, Grant. As far as if you're not playing Kyler, maybe play one of those Arizona running backs. I haven't finished my script for Yahoo yet, and I may put that rule in. I think that's kind of interesting. One way to be different this slate. We'll talk about those Arizona running backs in a second. Hey, Grant, we didn't talk about this in the show pre-show, but the other day on the basketball show, you were throwing in a bunch of your player prop picks into our Discord channel. We'll talk about that in a second because the people watch us on on YouTube are like, hey man, where is the chat? I want to chat with the people. I want to ask questions because, of course we compile those questions. We answer them at the end of the show. Devin compiles them and throws them my way. And in the Discord channel is where we're steering people because, So rotogrinders.com/Discord. You go to the live stream chat channel, and some of our premium Discord channels are premium. This one is not. This one's free. Anybody can join it. Just attach your regular Rotogrinders free or premium Rotogrinders account to it. Does not cost you anything. You can ask your questions. And Grant, you were dropping some winners the other day. I know you had yourself a very successful day as far as player props. I say all this to ask if you're going to be dropping, kind of sneaking in some of the people, kind of entice them, wet the beak to get them over there.
Football, but this is basketball ones. They're winners. I just
dropped whatever you have. Yeah, go ahead and throw some in there. Again, rotogrinders.com/Discord. Go to the live stream chat channel. And if you don't want Grant's winners, whatever reason, or you're in the wrong state to play them, yada, yada, and you don't have a guy, just join us and fire off some questions.
They're all available on Prize Picks, so you're technically good almost no matter what state you're in.
Yeah, is Prize Picks? I feel like it's not every state. It's in my state in Florida currently, but
it's in most states without legalized gambling.
We got anything else as far as quarterback? We're moving on the running back, right? I think we are. Yes.
Yeah.
Andre, let's talk running backs. We've had weeks where it was like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like legitimately good plays. I don't think that's this week. We have James Robinson as, Carlos Hyde is gone. They are a home favorite. So, you get all that stuff. And Robinson's been kind of in and out throughout the season, dealing with some injuries. And I still haven't wrapped my mind around if it's good chalk or bad chalk, but he is expected to be the highest owned running back today on DK, 28.6%. I believe that is the same on Fanduel as well. I'm kind of jumping over there as far as our projections. If it's not him, it's Harris, I think. Yeah, we have Harris just ahead of him as well. Talk about the top of the running backs, and then we'll have the Z conversation too, because especially on Fanduel, he's looking at 22% ownership because he has 6.7K, but he has been horrendous. Talk about Robinson and Harris at the top.
Dre, you're muted.
All right, sorry about that, guys.
Okay.
It's kind of like I love playing James Robinson today. He's probably like one of my favorite running backs to get to. I kind of feel just like, in a way though, like I want to get away from it a little bit, but I don't know if I can on the slate with the way running back is set up today. Just trying to find a good GPP running back that's going to be lower owned that I love a lot is just kind of hard. And James Robinson's just in the smash position today. And like I said, I just think that this offense is going to prove something. And Houston's not not doing really well against the run. I think the third overall in the past couple of weeks, a third in the past couple of weeks, giving up fantasy points to running backs, as well as fifth overall for the season. So it's kind of it sets up as a great spot for him to have a good game. But I do like again to some Trevor Lawrence as well. I think you can even probably pair them both together in a way too, because Robinson does catch some balls out of the backfield. So I think that there's enough work there where you can have them both, and they both can have pretty decent games, and they're both cheap enough where they can make that happen. And Najee Harris is he's going to get, he's just a workhorse running back. He's going to get 20 carries regardless. And I think that this is a position for him where he should be a great player and stand out. Especially going against a team like Tennessee, who's been struggling a little bit lately. I know they lately have been glass and giving up fantasy points to running backs, but I think this matchup is just a little bit different because we know what Pittsburgh likes to do. But I also don't mind using the passing game a little bit as leverage, which we'll get to that a little bit later on some other plays I like too from there. But those running backs are, but Najee Harris also has 7,800. With the way the slate works out, he's affordable too. Probably with the highest spend you want to get to today too. Well, the highest spend actually on the slate, so that's not even a bad price for him at 78. So I don't mind it. I know we also got Gaskin, who I agree with, coming at 20% ownership going against the Jets. He should have a pretty good game as well. I don't understand I understand kind of a little bit of Saquon ownership, but I just against the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know. Like I'd rather get somewhere else. Like I'd rather play one of these Denver running backs that we have on the slate. And I think that's where I could probably use my leverage towards today too as well. I'm going against Cincinnati because I think they're going to try to run the ball as much as they possibly can. And get and just eat up as much of the clock. I think the coach also found out last week when he was playing both of them, both running backs at a high clip, and they both performed phenomenally well. In the matchup they had against Detroit, I can see that happening. Well, I can see that them trying to do that this week, and just trying to wear the defense down. So he's not a bad play as well. In the Arizona situation too, I think we have to talk. I think we should talk about a little bit because I don't know who's gonna like they're both are active. I think Connor maybe still has a chance to miss, but I think he's more likely to play. So I would want to see who's going to get the majority of the work there. Do you think it would just go back to being Edmonds, or would it be just Connor? I mean, just a split backfield. Sorry.
It'll probably be split, and Connor will take most of the goal line work.
Okay, so maybe you might want to just stay away from it, I guess, in a way, just because of the amount of work that it might be. But it's just a good matchup. So you could make it probably like a situation like Detroit, I guess, and have them both. Zeke is a good tournament play. I think off of Dak. I think he's I think that everything they're gonna be probably more Dak stacks than Zeke, and I know Zeke's been terrible a couple of weeks. I think that they're trying to manage his workload because of his knee, but I think he can. All he has to do is score a couple touchdowns at the goal line, and if he does that, he meets his salary or exceeds and it goes over it. So I think he could be a good leverage play off of like a guy like Najee Harris today, just for that simple reason alone, because we know he can have that upside and get to the tournaments, as well as Joe Mixon as well too. So and then I think also with the Green Bay situation with the running backs, who these are some of the guys I like getting to today. I think we were talking pre-show about this, Dean, and we all think that Dylan's probably going to be more of the workload guy right now compared to Aaron Jones. So I probably would try to get maybe a little bit more Dylan in tournaments as opposed to Aaron Jones, especially with your like Aaron Rodgers stacks or if you're running a Huntley stack and want to run it back with somebody besides Devontae Adams to get different.
Yeah, if you're going to ask me to pick one, I would pick Dylan over Jones. I don't know how much I love either. The Arizona situation, like, so before Connor like wasn't really receiving passes, he wasn't really targeting stuff. He wasn't really the third down guy, but he's shown in the last month or so, whatever it is, that he's capable of doing that. And I'm not sure if the coaches are like, well, okay, we can give him some of that stuff now. We can trust him to do that. And who knows how they're trying to ease things in. And they also, in theory, should have this game in hand. 30-point team total, big favorites here against Dallas. By the way, I saw Schefter's tweet. The guy you were referencing before, Andre, was Tracy Walker, safety for the Lions, not going to be playing football today. You're talking about them missing one of their pieces on the defensive side. Yeah, Grant, let's go ahead and bring you in as well as far as the running backs and how you're handling. Jeff Wilson is going to be another guy that's going to be fairly popular today to some extent. We saw him flop yesterday, and he's a guy that they don't really throw the ball to, but the script does line up for him as long as Debo's not siphoning his carries, which we've seen that as well. Yeah, he's not catching the ball. He's not getting targeted, but he's running a good bit. He's got the weirdest, just sort of like his box score, whatever he's been doing of late. And the Denver guys, I think most people probably prefer Javonte Williams over Gordon. Both were missed a couple of days of practice, but both should be fine. I think Gordon had a thumb. They're both expected to play today. Harris, I mean, I don't love anything about that. It's just the volume. It's just the volume, and I have the money and whatever. Like, he's fine. Nothing about this matchup screams like it's amazing, but it's just kind of rises to the top just because everything else around it's not spectacular. And I want to get your thoughts on all these things, Grant. It sounds like you're not on Wilson, and I get it. Hard to get excited there. Zeke, I'm trying to pull back on him. Fanduel's a little tricky because he's 6'7" over there. That's where he's probably most appealing. Just a pretty good price. What do you have for me, Grant? There's a bunch of names been thrown out there. What do you want to gravitate to?
I like Robinson as chalk. Gaskin, Harris, Carter, and Wilson I do not like. They're all going to be heavily owned. Gaskin, yes, gets a matchup versus the Jets, but their O-line's not great, and the Jets aren't giving up as many massive games as they were earlier on. although they're still probably the best matchup for a running back. But I'm willing to fade it at that ownership. Najee, like, just play Mixon. Mixon's kind of the same thing as Najee, just he's going to be played half as much. Carter, he doesn't get checked down as much. Most of his big games come without Zach Wilson in the offense. Not a huge total. Coming back from injury, just don't really want to play him. Jeff Wilson, like, he's not going to get Debo will get the red zone work mostly. Like, don't play Jeff Wilson. Zeke is interesting as leverage off of Dak, although I prefer Mixon. Devontae is a solid play, but if you're going to go between one of these two guys, like, go with Gordon, because everyone wants to play Williams. And it's close to 50-50 shot whoever has the bigger game. Like, Williams is definitely the more likely one. But when you look at ownership on him, like 16.5% compared to 2.5%, it's very clear that Gordon is the much better play. If you want, you can play both. But Gordon's the better play. Like, my favorite running backs on the slate are probably Mixon and Melvin Gordon.
You mentioned Cordell Patterson, by the way, passing before. And my issue with him is that I saw a note about them kind of easing up on some of their veterans. They're playing for nothing. Like we saw him last week, just kind of on the sidelines, chilling like a big old coat on at the end of the game. Like, I think the game is still kind of like in play. Hasn't played more than 50% of the snaps since week 9. You know, it's just I get he has big playability and he's been, you know, super efficient when he has that opportunities. But I just have a hard time getting excited about Patterson as well. And he's kind of like a poor man's Debo. Like, Debo's been getting there through incredible efficiency as well too, especially quarterback touchdown equity. I saw, by the way, how important is this? I don't pretend to be like cornerback, wide receiver guy and matchups guy and that kind of stuff. I don't know I know that some of the defensive names. I've heard of Jimmy Smith, right? Jimmy Smith is out today for Baltimore with a COVID-19. How much does that matter? Anybody have a thought off top of the dome? Does that boost Rodgers to some degree incrementally?
To a slight extent, but I mean, it's not really changing things for me because I'm going to play a lot of Rodgers. I'm going to play a lot of Adams.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, you're already on it.
Yeah. This makes the wide receivers, like even the secondary wide receivers, more better of an option because Jimmy Smith was I think he was a starting corner safety for the team.
Yeah. Corner.
I'm good.
Sorry.
I got
it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize. All right. So let me just throw out a couple names that are like in the pool and the guys that have come up. Andre, Devontae Freeman. This is the kind of the guys that I'm looking at. Devontae Freeman, Michael Carter potentially, David Johnson as a run back in that Jacksonville game. None of these names should excite you, but like in theory, some can get there. Either of the Carolina running backs. You like any of these guys?
I like Michael Carter and I like Devontae Freeman for sure. I like getting to probably a little bit of both of them in tournaments, and more so Michael Carter. But the only thing I'm concerned with Michael Carter is I think we have Coleman coming back as well, if I'm correct. So that just concerns me just a little tiny bit, just because I want to make sure that Michael Carter's getting a full workload. But if he isn't, then I might cut back on him a little bit more, just from the try to see if I can dig into finding some reports on it. But yeah, the other two I'm not really that much interested. I like Freeman for tournaments just because, especially if they get by the goal line, I think you see Freeman try to rush the ball in and get a couple touchdowns here today and maybe get to value. It won't be that hard for him to get to value at 5.5K. So to me, he's a good play I like today. I think we didn't mention this. That I think is also a good play that I forgot to mention before was Nada Foreman going against Pittsburgh. I think no one's playing him today really, and I can see, and he's been getting a decent amount of work. And Pittsburgh is not that good against the run from everything we have here on data. So I don't mind getting into some Devonta Foreman and having him in lineups, and if he gives me like 15 to 20 fantasy points, I think it'll put also me in a great position to take down a tournament today.
Last week, the backfield for Tennessee, 34% snaps for Hilliard, 38 for McNichols, and 32 for Foreman. I think that was game script affected to some degree, but yeah, this is just kind of the stuff we're looking at. And we haven't seen Carter play for the Jets in like a month or so, and they're going nowhere. Like, why would they want to fully unleash him? And like you said, Coleman is still there. I think there's another running back that's still there too, right? Ty Johnson, I believe, is still lurking too.
And they might want to take a more look, or get more of a look at him too, because he hasn't played much this year. Besides obviously the last couple of weeks, because Coleman was out as well. So it's a messy. It's a little bit of a messy, tricky situation, and with the Jets, kind of hard to really just put your finger on it.
Yeah, and we mentioned Gaskin and like running backs against the Jets certainly made a thing, but Gaskin has not been amazing. That line's not been amazing. He did have he was on the COVID list as well too, I believe. I assume he is fine and good to go if he's going to play. But Grant, final thoughts as far as running backs. Anybody we didn't mention? Anybody you want to stress? Anybody you want to put your flag on and just say this is my guy? What do you have for me?
My guys are Gordon, Patterson, Mixon.
All right. Let's talk about receivers. Who wants to open up? Andre, talk to me about receivers. Who do you like today? We've kind of mentioned them in passing already a couple times. Devontae Adams, one of the best big spends in the slate for sure. No Waddle there for Miami, so target should condense. Parker is really, really cheap. Nice matchup against the Jets as well. He's going to be fairly popular. He's not going to sneak up on anybody. We mentioned Christian Kirk. Nice matchup in a dome. The absence of Hopkins, nice price as well too. What do you have here, Andre? Who are some of your top receiver plays today?
Yeah, I'm gonna run through this quickly because I know we're running short on time. I like Devontae Adams. Obviously, I like it, and I like trying to be a little bit over the field on Deebo Samuels because we know he's gonna get some work at running back, majority of work at running back probably, as well as being a pass catcher. So Deebo Samuels, Brandon Ayuk, Gabriel Davis is someone else I like getting to, especially from what happened to Emmanuel Sanders. I think to pretty much take his place. I also like getting to a pretty decent amount of Brandon Cooks today, and as well as the other receiver that got, I think wasn't it Nico Collins? He had a couple targets last week. They had 10 targets last week for 11.9 fantasy points at 3.5K. If he can give me something like that or a little bit more, that'd be excellent. Or even catch a touchdown, especially against a matchup with Jacksonville. And it's going to be hardly owned in like the Millie Maker tournament. So to me, that's a good play. I like him to Deontay Johnson too as well. I like any of those Pittsburgh, him or Chase Claypool today. I think they're sneaky a little bit. Well, not Deontay, but I think Chase also will be sneaky. They both are probably I don't think he's going to be that high on, but they are good plays. I think that they stand out to me. It can have upside games. I don't mind I want to get a little bit maybe over the field on Julio Jones as well. And obviously the Cincinnati receivers, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd. I don't mind getting to any combination of those guys.
Not sure if you mentioned Deontay Johnson. He's one of my favorites today as well. I throw him in the mix as far as one of the elite's receiving options. Do want to mention one last time before we step aside. Of course, we're here for the next 12 minutes or so. We want to knock out your questions as well. You want to ask questions on YouTube. What up, YouTube? Hit that like button. We do appreciate that. It helps us out with the algorithm and all that good stuff. Subscribe, turn on notifications. Ask your questions at rotogrinders.com/Discord. Go to the live stream chat channel. It is free to join. There are some premium channels. This is a free channel for anybody. And also Grant's dropped some winners as well. That's one way to entice you. Some player props for basketball later on today. Grant, give us some takes as far as receivers, the guys that we've talked about and the guys you want to enter into the conversation.
Cooks is probably my favorite wide receiver on the slate. Russell Gage is a fantastic tournament play. I hate playing him, but he's been pretty decent recently, and he's getting a lot of work. Outside of that, Julio Jones, I think, is a pretty decent tournament flyer. Coming in sub 4% ownership, 5.4K. Like, really don't have a ton of throw. I know he's been terrible, but I don't care. Like, it's just the situation that it is. Outside of that, like, I'm going way underweight on the Buffalo wide receivers. I don't really have much interest in them at all. I don't think that this is going to be a game where any of them really crush their value, and they're all going to be very heavily owned. So it's a pretty decent fade for me. Devontae Adams is still the best play on the slate. I don't care if Parker's going to be chalk. He's 4.3K. Well, I don't want to play Tua with him. He's still too cheap. And then Laquan Treadwell has been getting a decent amount of work. He's cheap. He's kind of the pivot off of Gabriel Davis. But yeah, like probably mostly just to say go underweight on Arizona wide receivers. Hope Kyler gets done with his legs. Go underweight on Buffalo wide receivers.
My favorite Jacksonville receiver, you mentioned Treadwell. I like Marvin. I think Marvin's the guy I'm going to land on a good bit. The Debo situation, Grant, how are you handling Debo Samuel? He's scored in 4 straight games, two touchdowns against Minnesota. So, like, yeah, he's had 1 target, 4 targets, 2 targets, 5 targets. Of course, he's running the ball, between 5 and 8 times as well. And he's been phenomenal. He's been super efficient. He's getting there, thanks in part mostly because of scoring touchdowns. You just think that's going to continue, or
I'm playing a ton of San Francisco. I didn't mention Ayuk too much, but I've got a decent amount of him. I got a lot of Debo. I got a lot of Kittle.
Yeah, and you just think Debo, I mean, he probably gets more than 1 target. Like the 1 target thing feels like an anomaly, and that's because Kittle stole all of them basically last week. He was an absolute monster. We'll talk about him soon enough. Do you feel like it's a good idea maybe to have at least 1 San Francisco skill position player in every lineup?
Yeah.
You're talking about like in San Fran.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as if you're going to power rank them, who would you prioritize
Kittle,
the
number
most?
2 Ayuk, number 3 Debo, but Ayuk and Debo are pretty close, and then number 4 Jeff Wilson.
Taking a look at our ownership, I mean, Adams is 22% on DK, Parker at 22 as well, then Samuel at 20, which that seems, I don't know, a little high to me when you consider what's happening with them recently. The price tag's not cheap. 8.2K. Then we have Beasley and Cooks, then Deontay Johnson, who gets all those targets. On Fanduel, where the cap is a little bit looser, it makes more sense that Adams is looking at 33.2%. And Grant, you said you're okay with that chalk, and you're still okay with that, right? You can get different elsewhere, obviously, but you think that's good chalk. It's good chalk, especially for this slate. Devontae.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything, Andre, that stands out to you as just bad chalk? It's just people are landing on it for whatever reason because some players are out or the salary happens to be good or just kind of makes all their stuff work. Is there anything you're looking at as far as I'm going to be lower than that percentage? I know why people are playing them, but I don't think this is what beats me.
I kind of want to say the Devontae Parker, but I do kind of understand why today he's play. So it just makes it difficult. So I'll probably be a little bit just under the field on him, even though his price is really cheap. But I just think that they can get it done on the ground, and I can't see Miami being a top scoring team on the slate. Like as far as putting up 30, 35 fantasy. 30 points on the slate or plus, or even maybe 27. But maybe I'm wrong. But that's just a guy I want to be a little bit low on, and probably Diggs as well. I'll probably get some more of the secondary receivers like Cole Beasley or Gabriel Davis, as well.
Yeah, Tua is best when he's pushed, right? And when that offense is pushed, and like you said, maybe the Jets just don't push him; they don't have to do a lot. And Parker gets 7 catches for 70 yards and whatever, which is fine. And he's also not a guy that puts up monster scores or monster totals. He's not a guy that typically is going to go down and catch the 50-yard pass. He's a volume guy. We have his biggest score on the season is 17.7 fantasy points. Of course, situation a little bit different. You're facing the Jets. There's no Waddle, condensed targets, but even still, yeah, that's an interesting take. And maybe, Parker is going to be really popular, especially, in the smaller fields. People are just, the ownership just rises. Those ownerships we gave out, that's for million maker stuff. But for a single entry or for 3 entry max, those numbers will almost definitely be higher. Grant, you got anything else as far as receivers, or shall we talk about some tight ends?
Let's talk about tight ends for a very short period of time. It's Kittle. So Shaughnessy. I really like Brevin Jordan. Outside of that, and Gesicki, outside of that, you're just throwing darts at the board. It's trash.
Yeah. O'Shaughnessy's another guy I just can't get in the end zone, but he probably gets 5 targets.
He might now without Urban Myers.
Yeah, who knows what the situation is going to be there. There's a lot of speculation, obviously. I don't even know how much Meyer had to say about the offense, maybe, and the personnel, who even knows either, and he didn't know who some of the guys were in the field, it appears. Yeah, Gesicki, we talked about the condensing targets in that Miami offense. Kyle Pitts has been so all over the place this year, up and down, mostly down, especially of late. I think Dawson Knox is a little bit a way to be different. Just kind of people want to gravitate toward potentially Gabriel Davis, potentially Beasley, of course, Diggs, and then Knox just kind of feels like a little bit like an overspend sometimes. He's obviously touchdown dependent. Ertz is another way to get there, maybe an increased target share under the assumption that, with Hopkins being out, he doesn't have the Q tag, but I expect him to play. I think Andrew's got a bunch of good looks from the backup that's probably going to play today for Baltimore. Andre, what do you have as far as tight ends?
Yeah, pretty much everything that you named is what I have in my player pool. I'm going to try to get a little bit of Noah Font as well. But I do like getting to Zach Ertz a lot. Kittle, I'm gonna try to spend up as much as I can to get a lot of Kittle. There's like Grant said before, the San Francisco stacks. I'm probably gonna have a lot of those as well. If not, then O'Shaughnessy is also a nice pivot and good in a good spot and paying down.
Oh man, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that's kind of sort of somewhat interesting here. Freiermuth, Grant, any interest in Freiermuth?
A little bit. He's fine.
Why do you like Brevin Jordan? Just like as a cheap run back, I suppose, if you're playing some Jags and
they're gonna throw no, I'm playing Davis Mills.
Yeah. You're playing Davis Mills on Super Draft or like everywhere?
Everywhere.
Okay. And maybe
he's Jordan done well.
In the box
and he's
last
had
week,
tough
right?
matchups, and he's gonna throw the ball 50 times.
Well, I don't know if they don't necessarily want to throw the ball 50 times. He might.
Most of his after he got his little bit of the first few starts out of the way, they've been throwing the ball 40 times with pretty decent regularity.
Well, because they've been down a ton, they've been getting walloped, and now they're facing the Jaguars. They may be down again, but they're probably
they're 5.5 point dogs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just bet the Jaguars if you think they're going to be down 3 touchdowns, which maybe you're doing.
There's always a backdoor cover.
Because Davis Mills gets there and throws a second touchdown on the last play of the game, a third touchdown the last play of the game. Bold proclamation. We never really get defensive takes. Do you want to continue that thought? And people don't really ask us about defense. Y'all know, as far
throw
as
a dart at the board. That's
it. The most popular defense we're looking at on DK is the Bills, then the Jags, and then the Broncos and the Dolphins.
Questions, Devin, get ready because Dean's wasting time.
I got some. Here, I have a question for you, Grant, specifically because we were talking about this was San Francisco. Alex got a question. Grant, FanDuel single entry. We're looking at Ayuk at 3%. So Ayuk at 3% and upgrade my defense, or Deontay at 22.9% with the Houston defense. And he adds the note, I have no Niners in my lineup. So
Ayuk.
Do you want him? You want him to get Ayuk and upgrade the defense as opposed to playing Deontay Johnson with the Houston defense?
Yes.
All right. Andre Flores Mark says, oh yeah, this is a good, we didn't bring him up. I'm on Ross St. Brown. If we did, I missed it. 24 targets the last 2 games. We presume they're going to be down and chucking once again. I have some on Ross St. Brown. I know he was popping a bit in Derek Carty's The Blitz. What are your thoughts here, Andre, as far as St. Brown for Detroit?
Oh yeah, I definitely have some of him for sure. He's going to probably be the main target from them for sure. So he's in my lineups.
Grant, give me this. FanDuel tournaments, your favorite quarterback wide receiver combination. Now, there's a note here. Preferably, let's get them low owned. So I don't want any Allen.
Mills and Cooks.
I don't. Could you say anything besides a player from Houston? Or you're sticking on the.
Do you want? I mean, if you want, Rodgers is going to be lower owned.
Yeah. Would you double stack Rodgers today with a Lazard or an MBS?
You can. I don't hate it. I prefer Lazard, but I'm probably just mostly doing Adams.
I think MBS is like officially questionable in the late game, but I assume he's going to play. Whatever. Stay tuned. Actives and actives. And yet, that's one reason why you want to stay tuned for the show following us. Devin will throw him. Well, you know what? I was going to say he would throw him in the chat, but that's not going to happen because the chat. Maybe he'll throw him in the Discord channel. How about that? If nothing else, they'll talk about it in the show as well. I think it's Ben Gretch with I think it's Ben and it's not Eric. I'm pretty sure it's one of those two. It's either Ben or Eric with Notorious. Ben, yeah, I saw Notorious will be on the show as well. So you want to stay tuned for that. We never really get Noto on air. Well, for golf, but I don't listen to the golf contact. I'm sure he's fabulous, but I read a lot of his stuff here at RG. Andre, give me your favorite, maybe your favorite quarterback wide receiver combination, maybe your favorite game stack, something along those lines.
I like Jimmy with Ayuk and with either paired with one of his receivers as long as Debo's the other one. So I like that today. I also like Joe Burrow with, like I said, Jamar Chase with T. Higgins, and obviously Aaron Rodgers, and what's his name? And Devontae Adams.
Grant, same question, curveball, no Houston. Give me something away from Houston, your favorite game snack, quarterback stack, whatever you have for me. I threw you off.
That threw me off. It's Rodgers and Adams.
You got anything else, Grant, as far as the slate? Well, what should we pay attention to? What's going to happen? What's going to break the slate? Who's winning $1 million? Who's going to be on that
Davis Mills.
All right. Ending on a high note, Davis Mills. We're going to step aside and make way. Of course, again, stay here. Don't go anywhere. You're going to get Beer's 6-pack, I believe, as the interlude, that's going to bleed into the next show to check out his pick 6 that was selected probably 3 days ago. And we'll see if it plays out that way. All right. Do thank you all for watching. Hit that like button. I was going to say hit that like button on your way out, but you're not going anywhere because you're going to stick around for Notorious along with Ben. And then they take you down to crunch time, which takes you guys all have to lock. Good luck on week 15. Happy holidays early. That was Andre. That was Grant. That was Devin producing. That was football. That was Dean. We're out of here. Oh!
Back in the Fantasy Bar, 6 plays for you for week 15 on Yahoo, including some of my favorite value plays, some correlations I'm looking at, a quarterback wide receiver pairing I think you need this week, and of course, my favorite play of the week. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Barn. Find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 15 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. This time talking some Yahoo with 6 of my favorite plays. Thank you, as always, for stopping by the Fantasy Bar and checking out the video. Now, before we get into things, as always, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Get notified when these videos are coming out. Take advantage of a special offer over on Yahoo right below us in the comment section. Yahoo doing a big once again, giving away free money in their baller contest. Take advantage of this overlay. Don't see it very often. If you're into sports betting, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer. That link down there as well. Tons of information there to check out, to compare the odds across different books, analytics, trends, everything you need to make some smart bets. Check it out today. scoresandodds.com/beer. All right, let's get into the plays here for week 15. Let's start at the running back position with Sony Michel. $19. Now, we know COVID, a big issue here this week. The Rams, certainly one of those teams that's dealing with. In fact, Darrell Henderson, one of the guys on the COVID list right now. If he's able to return, I still like Sony Michel. I think he's done enough here over the last couple weeks. The Rams have to know by now, Darrell Henderson, not a workhorse type running back. I think Sony Michel going to be the lead of this committee moving forward. Maybe that's a hot take, but that's certainly the way I see this playing out. If Henderson is out, all systems go here on Sony Michel. So really love in both scenarios here, even if Henderson is able to return. We're talking 23.5 touches per game over the last 2 here. So that workhorse type running back, the Rams certainly want to lean on. I think Michel fits that bill more than Darrell Henderson. I'm not calling Michel more talented than Henderson. I just think he fits better as a lead running back. And whoever it is, even if they're both getting work here, Seattle certainly giving in this department second most fantasy points allowed to this position. So we'll update if we need to, but even if Henderson's back, I love Michel. If Henderson's out, he becomes one of my favorite plays easily on this slate at under $20. All right, let's go to the other side of that game. A little correlation here at tight end with Gerald Everett, just $12. Now, tight end a little tough this week. We're missing a lot of the higher end guys. Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, if he's back or not on this slate. Kittle, questionable here. So Gerald Everett, a guy that I'm going to go to and save some money on here. Some pretty solid games here over the last couple weeks. Nothing that's slate breaking, anything like that. If I can find a $12 tight end that has a shot to find the end zone, it's certainly what I want to look for. And he's done that now in 2 of the last 3 games. Both happen to be road games. A little stat I found interesting. And Seattle, maybe without DK Metcalf here, we saw Tyler Lockett placed on the COVID list. So if they're down a wideout, makes this play even more intriguing. Even if those guys are back, the Rams bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to this position. And you get a little revenge narrative cherry on top here. Gerald Everett, a solid value tight end this week at just $12. All right, we saved some money there. Let's spend up at the quarterback position with Josh Allen, $34. So he showed us last week. Let's not forget about me, guys. I'm still here. I can still provide a very high ceiling, and we certainly saw that in that game against Tampa Bay, that furious comeback in the end. Now you get a home game, very high total here for Buffalo, a spot they desperately need a win here, and a price that has dropped $7 on Yahoo. Doesn't sound like a lot, but from 41 to 34, that opens up a lot of possibilities in your lineup. In fact, second lowest price we've seen on him all season long here on Yahoo. Now the matchup, not the greatest. We generally love to target those easier matchups. Carolina, been tough on quarterbacks, no doubt, but Buffalo projected to score almost 4 touchdowns in this game. Josh Allen going to be a big reason why. I know he's dealing with a toe injury. Maybe that zaps a little bit from his running upside. I still think there's plenty of upside there. I think this price is too cheap. I think their backs are against the wall, and I think you see Josh Allen respond in a big way here and lead his team to a big victory over the Carolina Panthers. All right, we like Josh Allen. Who do we pair him with? Steph Diggs, too easy. We're going to wide receiver, Gabriel Davis, $12. So no Emmanuel Sanders this week, looking doubtful. So it's going to be the trio of Diggs, Beasley, and Davis. Davis, the cheapest of those 3. The other 2, yes, they certainly see a ton of targets and snaps as well. But 84% of the snaps last week. We know this team loves to utilize 3 wide receiver formations. 8 targets in that game against Tampa Bay. I think you could see a similar output here against this Carolina secondary. Touchdowns now in back-to-back weeks. So we know this guy electric when they get around the red zone. And Carolina, when you look at the last 4 weeks, middle of the pack against wide receivers. So maybe we're seeing a little chink in the armor here of this Carolina defense. Buffalo, again, very high team total. Gabriel Davis, big-time upside at a very low $12 cost. All right, back to the running back. Again, we're going to tiptoe around COVID here. We're going to go to Miami. We're going to go with Myles Gaskin, $21. Now, as of this recording, I realize we don't have clarity on this situation. We couldn't avoid every team that had COVID. We got to make some stands here. If anything changes in this pick, in that Miami backfield, we will certainly get back in the comment section to make the adjustments here. But I'm expecting him to clear these protocols. Vaccinated player, just needs a couple clean tests here. And if he is back in that lineup, he will be the workhorse here for this Miami team. Now, last time against the Jets, 26 touches in that game. I know the production was not great. It's kind of been the story here with Myles Gaskin. But if I can get a guy 25, 26 touches at right around $20, I'm going to go back to the well here. Did score a touchdown in that game. And the Jets, we know, easily the worst team against running backs. It's not even close. Giving up 4 more touchdowns than the next closest team and almost 4 fantasy points per game of the second place team. Target this matchup. If it's Gaskin, great. If it's not, we will update things in the comment section. But I'm expecting Myles Gaskin back in that lineup. Going to be in my lineups here against the Jets this week as well. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play on Yahoo for week 15. Before we do that, we want to continue our Beast of the Week contest, free to play. All you have to do, get in the comment section right below the video and guess fantasy points for my favorite play here on Yahoo. The closest guess going to win themselves a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. Let's wrap this baby up. My favorite play for week 15, you know, Mass, Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time. We owe you one more wide receiver. A guy in a great spot this week. We're going to Dallas. We're rolling with CeeDee Lamb of the Cowboys, this week's Beast of the Week. Here's another price drop. We talked about it with Josh Allen. CeeDee Lamb's price has dropped as well, all the way down to $26, very close to teammate Amari Cooper. I want to buy on Lamb here. I think he's got the highest ceiling of this bunch. I don't hate Cooper. Hell, I don't hate the double stack here in this game against the Giants. But Lamb starting to put that consistency on the board. At least 6 receptions now in 5 of the last 7 games. The last matchup against the Giants, 484-1. And we know the Giants struggle against this position. Bottom 10 in the league in fantasy points allowed. 2 wide receivers. This Dallas offense in a very good spot. Heavy favorites here. High team total here. Get some exposure. I'm going to do it here with CeeDee Lamb. Easily my favorite play on the board in this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that'll wrap us up for week 15 here on Yahoo. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, hit me up in that comment section right below the video. Don't forget fantasy points for CeeDee Lamb.
What is up, everyone? Happy week 15. We are here for the GPP Final Take show. And as you can probably tell, I'm not Eric Beimfohr. I kind of wish I was, one of the better tournament players out there. Also pretty nice guy. But yeah, they offered me this show this week, and happy to oblige because Ben Gretch, been a big fan of your Stealing Signals newsletter for a very long time. Also very big fan of your karaoke skills in Nashville. I got to see you just crush it. The whole bar was up on their feet singing along. So how are you doing? And are you ready to break down this ugly slate?
I'm doing well. I'm definitely, ready, question mark, to break down this slate, but probably not as ready as I was for that karaoke performance. Yeah, that was a good time.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. If you are watching on YouTube, you're probably seeing that the chat is disabled. So hop on over to the RG Discord. You can go to, let's see what the link is, rotogrinders.com/Discord. We're in the live stream chat channel. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of questions, and we're going to try to get through this the best we can. So if you have any specific questions, fire them up in that channel. We'll try to get to them at the end of the show. I figure we'll just go position by position, but let's start with an overview of the slate. There were originally 11 games on the slate. That's down to 9. Ton of COVID news, ton of injury news. How are you attacking just the slate overall? And there's any single situations that you're monitoring leading up to lineup lock?
Well, I think the biggest thing is running back is pretty gross, right? And so we have a lot of cheaper running backs that are projecting, to be in a lot of lineups. Jeff Wilson, James Robinson's a big one, Myles Gaskin. People want to play Deontay Foreman, Devonta Freeman. A lot of affordable running backs, which, I think they're catching so much ownership because the high-end running backs are just not great on the slate right now. We have, Najee at the top and Zeke, and those guys have not really hit ceilings as much lately. Najee had a pretty strong week recently, but not a ton of running backs that just pop. Obviously, we saw Taylor last night. Some of the other guys aren't on the slate, and so I'm trying to think of creative ways to be different at running back, because I think a lot of those running backs that are strong values and cheaper are can certainly fail as well. And so I'm trying to, especially in tournaments, trying to figure out creative ways to build. It's an interesting slate where there's a lot of the games are right around this 44 team total. There's a couple that are 47. There's a couple that are a little lower, but there's not really anything that is a clear game to target necessarily for game stacks and things like that. So I think the higher price quarterbacks are going to be popular. The higher price stacks are going to be a little popular because you can get some of the running back value. I want to try to consider some other ways to build.
Yeah, in theory, this seems like a perfect tournament week because, Chalk is just concentrating at every single position. I do the consensus value rankings each week where we have to rank 8 quarterbacks, 10 running backs, and I rank 2, and then I'm like, I don't want to rank anyone else because it's just such an ugly slate. But let's get started. Let's go to quarterback. It seems like at the very top, there's 2 obvious choices, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen. Kyler obviously going to be without DeAndre Hopkins, but a great matchup against the Lions. And you compare him up with the number of his cheap receivers. And then Josh Allen, pretty much, everything flows through him. They are big favorites at home. So do you have a preference between those 2?
I'm leaning more towards Kyler among those 2, but I mean, I think he can play both. I'm definitely looking at both. I think we can kind of, I mean, Dak's a little bit cheaper, but we can kind of pull Dak into this in terms of like ceiling potential. I think those three are pretty clearly the highest ceiling quarterbacks. But then there's, certainly you can go down too. I mean, Devin was mentioning that we had some questions about Tyler Huntley in the chat. Baltimore has a really low team total, but like if they're able to get going, that they're willing to throw a little bit even with Huntley in there. If they're able to get going, you could see, somebody like that as a cheaper quarterback. Maybe Trevor Lawrence without Urban Meyer, who knows? Maybe he finally has a good game, but you can see a cheaper quarterback hit a little bit of a ceiling. But I am sort of focusing on the higher ceiling quarterbacks. It does feel like one of those three quarterbacks is going to wind up having, a good enough game on the slate where there's not really high team totals, like I was talking about, that probably going to want one of those three guys in there, especially Kyler and Allen with their rushing ability bump over Dak, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad he brought up Dak because he doesn't look like he's going to be very popular this week. Maybe that bumps up a little bit now that we get news that Pollard's playing. So maybe people will be, less interested in Zeke, which we'll cover here in a little bit. And I listened to your show, this show last week, and you were mentioning the Giants haven't given up a ton of plays. Is that still a thing, or can we, play Dak with confidence? Seems like a great spot with the high total.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely missed on that when I took the under on that game last week. Herbert's ability to just chuck the ball over everyone 65 yards to Guyton for the long touchdown open things up a little bit, but they still had to take a lot underneath. I mean, I think that's definitely a concern with Dak, frankly. I think the Giants are going to sit back in the too deep shell a little bit. That's the way that Dak fails for sure, is if they don't hit enough explosive plays and it's too much underneath stuff. Dak didn't play great last week against Washington. I think Washington's a little bit better of a defense right now, but the Giants are certainly a capable defense. So that I am a little bit off him. It's just like I think he's in that discussion, at least from a ceiling perspective, if things go right. Like he has enough weapons. If he can hit for some of those big plays, if he can hit Lamb downfield or hit Amari or whatever.
And then you mentioned Huntley. I think he's a really interesting tournament play. We're obviously probably not going to know for sure if Lamar is going to be out or not by the time the first games kick off. So I think a lot of people will have their quarterback locked in by the 1 p.m. games. And then, if Jackson ends up playing, you could always pivot to, Jimmy Garoppolo or someone else in that late slate. So I think he's certainly interesting. He's a guy with a lot of rushing upside playing at home. Not too worried about the matchup against the Packers. Is there anyone else? You mentioned Trevor Lawrence. It's kind of funny. Nobody wanted to play the Jaguars. They get rid of Urban Meyer, and now everyone wants to play the Jaguars. And I'm kind of in that same boat. I mean, I bet him this week. I'm on, James Robinson, who we'll cover here shortly. I think the passing game's an interesting way to get some leverage off of James Robinson in tournaments. So are you buying into that as well, or are we just overplaying this narrative?
I think a little of both. I mean, I'm interested in it. I don't know if I'll actually get it into a lineup because, I mean, there is a reality. I mean, number one, the offense isn't going to change overnight. And number two, there's a reality here that Lawrence hasn't played very good. And so I'm a little bit concerned. But I can see, I can see the case for it at least a little bit. And especially like it is so appealing off the Robinson chalk, like you said, but that's, I don't know. I mean, I can see the case for it, but not what I'm huge on. You mentioned like, is there other QBs? I mean, especially in tournaments, I think on this slate, because there's so many similar game environments that, you can certainly pick out a number of different quarterbacks if you're playing those games to shoot out a little bit, and particularly playing those top 3 quarterbacks, think of as more of like elite in fantasy. They were, high picks in seasonal leagues. They've been good all year in Allen and Kyler and Dak. If you playing all of them to not really hit those 30-point ceilings, and then, someone cheaper gets up to like 25, you can see that from, a Jimmy Garoppolo or, potentially a Roethlisberger or Tannehill in that Tennessee game. I mean, to me, it's like, are you going to play one of these games to be a little bit higher scoring? And so kind of how you want to attack. Because if one game shoots out and it's like that looks like this, like, that can certainly be helpful. So a little bit like some doubles or some game stacks if you're building more lineups. I tend to stay in a smaller number of lineups, so I'm not really approaching a lot of those quarterbacks, but I do think they're in play.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think you hit on it earlier. Chasing those high upside quarterbacks makes a lot of sense, especially on a week where we have no shortage of value at the other positions. So we do have one final question when it comes to the quarterbacks from Alex Santi. He's a contributor here at Rotogrinders. What do you think Kyler's ownership looks like in smaller field stuff? We currently have him projected for 17% for the larger field tournaments. I would probably say, him and Allen get over, 40 to 45% combined, just because everyone wants to play it safe at quarterback in those smaller field tournaments. Do you have a similar read on that?
That's probably the case. But yeah, I mean, at quarterback, you're not ever really going to hit 30, 40, 50% for either of those individual players. Right. And so, if there's a spot to eat the chalk, like you're still only probably eating like 20% on Murray or on Allen. So I think there's, especially in the smaller field stuff, I think there's a significant difference between 20% and 40%, which obviously you can get to with some of the best values every week at the skill positions.
All right. We're going to talk about the DFS OGs contest on FanDuel. This has been a grind to fill each week, but I really do appreciate everyone that has joined it each week. It is a listener league with myself, Head Chopper, Beer Makers Fan over on FanDuel. If you want to join it this week, $7 single entry contest. Go to fanduel.com/OG show. And I'm sure Devin will drop a link in the chat. I think there's about 100 spots to fill this week. And if you have your RG avatar and you end up winning this week, you get a full free year of RG Premium. And that includes all sports. So that is a huge prize that we're adding for free. So if you don't mind doing that, we certainly would appreciate it. Also, if you are in a legal betting state, if you want to try out a new sportsbook, BetMGM, you can use bonus code GRINDERSBET. You bet $10 and you win $200 instantly if your team scores a touchdown. So if you had to pick one team to score a touchdown this week, Ben, who would it be?
To just score one touchdown?
The safest team to score a touchdown. Turn your $10 into 200.
I'll say the Cardinals, I guess.
All right. If they don't hit, we can come after Ben later in the week. So let's go over to running back. We kind of have a similar situation where there's two guys that seem like the obvious plays. We have Najee Harris. He's played, I think, 95 and 97% of the snaps, something like that, the last two games. And then we have James Robinson, no Carlos Hyde, no Urban Meyer. And it kind of sounds like, they're saying Robinson's going to be the guy. Great matchup at home against the Texans. Is this good chalk? Is this bad chalk? How are you approaching these two?
I think in tournaments, anytime you see Robinson, I'm seeing ownership projections that could be up over 40%. Anytime you see something like that, and he's coming off a game where he had 6 touches and 4 yards. It's not that hard to be like, from a game theory perspective, there are, huge arguments to fade this. Obviously, it's a different scenario than last week. Urban Meyer's out. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that they need to get Robinson more involved. They're playing Houston. They're actually favored for once. And so you have these, situations where, or these elements where Robinson does make sense. But it's like, for me in tournaments, like, if I'm going to play him, I'm going to be doing some really creative stuff elsewhere, but he's a pretty easy fade just based on the fact that I can get leverage on almost half the field if I do that.
Yeah, it's hard though, man. When you build one lineup, you pull up, any projections or matchups or anything, and everything kind of points to Robinson, opportunity as well. So yeah, 5.4K over on DraftKings. He's pretty cheap on FanDuel as well. So man, I think I'm just going to eat the chalk. I probably shouldn't. I've been doing that far too often this season, which is why I haven't had a ton of success in tournaments. But you mentioned it. If you do eat a lot of chalk, you definitely want to get, contrarian elsewhere. Do you like Najee Harris against the Titans? This is a team that, man, I don't feel like the Titans are very good, but somehow they're 9-4 and they're just like mediocre in all the stat categories that I'm looking at.
Yeah, the tricky thing with Harris, his routes were really strong to start the year. He had the really big reception game early in the year. His routes have been still very good because he plays every snap, but less consistently amazing, like not over 80%, down around like 60% for a while now as a percentage of dropbacks. and he is playing every snap. So that's basically been an indication that they're holding him into pass block a little bit more. It's been sort of a shift to help protect Roethlisberger. And Ben's just maybe not dumping off as much, but Harris's receiving has not been as strong in the last several weeks. And so without that, like, because what he had going for him early in the year was just this really strong combination of receiving and, massive overall workload, the potential for a lot of touchdowns. Last week, he has a multi-touchdown game, but he actually got really lucky on both of those. One was a DPI in the end zone that leads to a 1-yard touchdown run. The other was right after one of Deontay Johnson's drop touchdowns. Then Najee got a dump off for a TD. I mean, that doesn't mean those plays don't count or anything, but certainly he hasn't had the type of touchdown equity that a really high priced, what is he, almost 8K running back that you would hope for. And if his receiving is not really that high price, and then also the third element with running backs, just like, can he be an efficient player? Can he hit on huge plays? He does not tend to do that. He had like a 23-yard run last week against Minnesota. That was his longest run of the year. He has not hit on any kind of like big 30, 40-yard plays. And that was the book on him coming in, was that like Alabama opened up phenomenal rushing lanes for him. They were he had like the highest of the draft class, the highest yards before contact, and then he also had one of the lowest rates of 20-yard runs. So like, great blocking in college, doesn't actually beat the second level a ton, gets what's there, maybe a few more yards, but not necessarily the most explosive back in the league. And so all those elements come together, and it's like, man, if he's chalk, like, I can definitely see scenarios where he catches only a few passes, doesn't, it'll come down to TDs, certainly, especially on sites like FanDuel, but Pittsburgh's offense hasn't generated a ton of TD opportunities either. And so he, for me, especially at his price tag, is like sort of an even easier fade than Robinson. I think a lot of the guys that are catching ownership are kind of doing it because we don't have obvious running back ceiling. And so I want to pivot and try to find, some interesting contrarian ways to play this.
Well, I love the idea of pivoting off the chalk, but where are we going? I mean, who are you going to play?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it from a game perspective. So like one of the ones that is kind of gross, but like we talked about Huntley a little bit, that Green Bay Baltimore game is interesting. I think Green Bay wins that game through their backs, and that's another one where we can potentially get leverage. Adams looks like a really chalky play this week. Or at least I think it's possible that they can win that game through their backs if Baltimore isn't really sticking with them. Last week, Jones had a 23-8 snap edge in the first half, was still the clear lead. In the second half, they came out, they established Dillon right after halftime, gave him a ton of work. He winds up with more snaps, more touches. All the projection systems now this week have it as pretty close, if not having Dillon a little bit ahead, especially with the projected positive game script. I think Dillon's a decent play. He's projecting at lower ownership and somebody you could consider to mix in. I also think Jones, as far as like guys that are going overlooked, I see all this cheap value and people wanting to play it. And I'm trying to look at the high end, like where are some ceilings that maybe the projections aren't hitting. Jones is a dude in a great offense, still was the lead in the whole first half last week. Like I said, every week has 3 TD potential. He's done that so many times, right? And they use him in the passing game. They throw to him down the field. One of his 2 touchdowns last week was on a pass with some air yards under it, not just a normal running back dump off, which I always write about in signals as having a little bit extra value when we can see these running backs get down the field. I think Jones has sort of untapped ceiling that's not getting caught in a lot of the projection systems, and is somebody that in larger fields, like I want to pivot to when he's going to be 5% owned.
I like that call quite a bit. The one running back I was looking to, wanted to get your opinion on, is Joe Mixon. So I was just looking at some basic, offensive versus defensive line stuff. Cincinnati's offensive line's been a pretty good run blocking unit. Denver, I don't know if their linebackers are back, but they lost a couple of linebackers a few weeks back, and they've been giving up some really big games on the ground. This game as a whole is kind of getting overlooked because of the low total, because of the fact that it's in Denver. But Mixon, he had a couple of bad games in a row, but prior to that, he was getting 25 plus fantasy points every week. Now nobody wants to play him. Am I crazy for liking him as a pivot off of some of the chalk?
No, I think he's very similar to like everything I just said about Aaron Jones, frankly, right? Like the ceiling is definitely there. It's a nice way to pivot. He's just, I don't like that game environment as much. Both of those teams can be run heavy. That obviously benefits Mixon, but it could just be sort of a slow game between the Bengals and the Broncos. And then he's just a little bit catching a little, like almost maybe like double ownership of Jones as far as what sort of we're expecting and what it looks like. That's sort of what I'm expecting, is there might be a little bit of gap there where more people will be interested in Mixon, and I see them as similar. But I do think he's a solid play. He's a really good guy to have in for like little minis. If you want to go to like Jerry Jeudy or something. That Cincinnati Denver game is one where I don't really want to stack the whole game, but I could see pairing up some pieces in that game, certainly to kind of correlate your lineup a little more. The other guys, we were talking about Robinson. We're talking about this cheap value. It looks like Jeff Wilson's going to catch a good amount of ownership. Myles Gaskin is another one that's really popular. None of those guys are, like, in my opinion, demonstrably better plays than Deontay Foreman, who is coming in like around 10%. So when we talk about like going other directions or other places, I think somebody like Foreman can make some sense. I think the Arizona running backs, similar to the Green Bay running backs, high team total, could get in a situation where Chase Edmonds actually plays more than we expect, or James Conner is playing because Conner's banged up, or Conner's playing more than we expect. Those guys are in a vacuum are in a great spot. Big favorites against the Lions, and not particularly expensive, not coming in at high ownership, definitely have some ceiling ownership combo there. So some guys like that also that are just like the less popular options in those cheaper ranges, I think I just don't think they're that different. Like the projections are showing that they're pretty different. I don't think they're that different of plays than, Robinson's maybe a little bit above each of them, but especially like the Jeff Wilsons, like Deontay Foreman could be a better play than Jeff Wilson 40% of the time, right?
Man, I've gotten burned twice by Jeff Wilson against the Jaguars and then again last week. But man, if those starts didn't happen and we just had him starting for the first time this year at home, 9-point favorites against the Falcons, one of the best matchups on the board. I know Debo's still in some of his carries. I know he's not very involved in the passing game. But if he's going to get 60% of the carries, oh man, I just have to do it. He's already taken my money twice. I might as well make it a third time. But I'm glad you brought up Foreman, because you're the perfect type of guy to answer this. Your stealing signals is all about noise and signal. And so I was looking up last week, and all three of the Titans running backs were around, 33% snaps. So is that, more noise than signal?
There's definitely concern there, right? The biggest thing that I would add in terms of like, additional context is Foreman was the clear start. Foreman was their focal point on the first drive, got a bunch of touches, caught a pass on that first drive. He winds up with 2 catches. The second one came in the second quarter. I know I wrote this week in Signals what percentage of their running back touches in the first half he got. I think it was like 13 of their 17 in the first half. They crushed Jacksonville. They beat them 20-0. Jacksonville was never threatening on offense, even though it was only 20-0. It felt like 40-0. And so that's the element that I'm looking at, is that they came out using Foreman as the clear starter, as the clear focal point of their first drive. Foreman scores to cap that first drive. Like I said, he was also involved in the passing game on that first drive. I think he played every snap of the first drive. Got 5, 1, 2, 3. I'm looking at the game log now. 6 touches on the first drive. And they go up 7-0 right away. He only winds up with like 15 touches in the whole game, in part because there was no competition. But I do think they see him. And the other element of it is I think they see him as the goal line back. He's been dominating the green zone touches over the last couple of weeks, especially in situations that matter, not relative to like, late last week where we got into blowout script. And that's when, Jeremy McNichols played quite a bit. All of his run was in the fourth quarter, pretty much. Hilliard still played behind Foreman and got some snaps in the second quarter. He started to get additional run in the third. It was kind of like they were pulling back on Foreman is sort of the point. And so I think there's some chance that Foreman winds up, rather than being at like 33%, if this game's a little more competitive, that he's up over 50%.
Yeah, always important to keep in mind context. So if you haven't subscribed to Ben's newsletter, highly recommend it. A couple more running backs. We were talking about Zeke before the show. I believe your exact words were, "I don't like old," which I thought was pretty good. And Tony Pollard's going to be active. Sounds like he's going to handle, a couple dozen snaps, which very vague, but at the same time, that's not that big of a difference from his usual workload. It sounds like Clement's also going to be working in. as well. But Zeke, 6,700 on FanDuel. This is the cheapest he's been maybe ever. So he's going to be popular. I don't think I want to play him, but do you have a strong read on this?
Yeah, I mean, on a site like FanDuel, like you can definitely get in for 2 touchdowns. He's still got the touchdown equity, I would say. But I mean, you're playing with fire. The efficiency is not going to be there. I mean, anyone who's watched him knows that. The stats back it up. He's not going to hit you any explosive plays like we're talking about with Najee. And the concern last week, I mean, again, it was a blowout, not that much different than Foreman, but like that's the type of Zeke's the type of guy at his salary that you used to get all the touches even in a blowout, right? And the fact that Corey Clement comes out and rushes more times than Zeke last week, even though Zeke still played more snaps and everything, just not a great sign. Not a great sign that when they announced that Pollard's going to be in, the commentary was he's going to play a couple dozen snaps. All 3 backs will be involved. Like before, there wasn't a third back if Pollard was playing a couple dozen snaps. Just the fact that they had to emphasize, like, yeah, I mean, Clement's still going to play is, I mean, Zeke is not the Zeke that we remember right now. He is not a workhorse. He's not going to get all the work. He's never been a huge passing game weapon. He definitely catches passes. So you did like his big numbers. You did rely a little bit on what I call like the low value touches, the rush attempts, and just gaining rushing yardage. I mean, for years, Zeke led the NFL like year after year, and a lot of the major rushing stats basically before Derrick Henry, started taking over the last couple of years. If he would average 100 rushing yards a game. I mean, that was huge. We're not going to get that if he's only getting 12 carries, right? So that's the element where he's a complete stay away to me right now.
Yep, I think I'm on the same page. Couple other running backs, then we'll move over to wide receiver. The Denver running backs, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. You mentioned, not the best game environment. Both teams wanting to run the ball quite a bit. And then Michael Carter's kind of popping as a value play. It seems like his, value was kind of tied to, Mike White, just dumping off to him before he got hurt. So I don't really feel great about that, but especially if he's going to be 15% ownership like we have him projected. And then who was the other one? You mentioned him a little bit, but Myles Gaskin, is he going to get all the work this week? The coaching staff was kind of vague earlier in the week, but it seems like he's going to be the feature back here against the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, he's one that Gaskin's work has been one of the hardest ones to monitor all year. There's been some games where I expected him to get all the work and he was not very involved. That was mostly earlier in the year. It's been fairly consistent lately, but I mean, this Miami Jets game is just not a game that I want a lot of exposure to overall. And so the fact that the running backs on both sides of this game that has the second lowest team total ahead of only the Houston-Jacksonville game, which hilariously you have Robinson in that game as the other chalky running back. I mean, these games have like 41 over unders, and people are jamming in these running backs that haven't really done a lot. I mean, these offenses can just be bad. Like that can certainly happen. As far as Miami and the Jets and those backs in that game, I'm pretty much staying away from all of them. I want to back on a team I feel confident can score 2 touchdowns. Like you were asking earlier, which offenses do we feel most confident score a touchdown? None of these offenses, right? Like how many opportunities are they even going to get to pound in short touchdowns? So just the fact that there's any uncertainty with Gaskin's work or with Carter's as he comes back from injury, like do we have any reason to believe that Carter's going to play as much as he was before he was hurt? Like we really don't. They might just take it a lot more, a lot easier with him. We saw that Walter guy pop up a couple weeks ago. He didn't play as much last week. Apparently he was sick. I mean, even he could be, involved in the offense today. I mean, there's no way I'm playing Carter. There's just too many backs there. For all I know, Walter's inactive because they have Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman as well. But and Miami's side's kind of same deal. Like I just don't feel super confident that that Gaskin's going to get a ton of work in the game environment, the team totals and all that. It's just like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move over to wide receiver. We spent enough time talking about gross running backs. So at the very top, Devontae Adams, he's chalked that I'm going to be eating this week. It's hard not to. I mean, Baltimore secondary has been ravished with the injuries all season, and that continues. Marlon Humphrey's obviously on injured reserve. Jimmy Smith was just ruled out this morning. He was placed on the COVID list. So, I mean, it feels like a blow-up spot for Adams, but I guess it could go to any of these Packers wide receivers. Are you worried about Aaron Rodgers' toe injury? Or, I mean, he's taken off the injury report. I think he's going to be fine. Are you playing Adams? Or are you looking to pivot away?
I definitely want to play Adams. I think you're absolutely right. Is good chalk. I mean, we just consistently see the target volume and the ceiling. That's the stuff that I'm more comfortable banking on than a lot of these running back situations in terms of eating some chalk. Part of the reason, I like going to Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon in some of these spots. I do think Green Bay is going to be fine from an offensive perspective, and I'm going to play enough Adams that now I'm pivoting a little bit in some of my other lineups. I have a little bit of exposure to multiple ways the Packers can get there. That's maybe the only way that Adams isn't like a clear play is if he doesn't get the TDs, if the TDs go to the backs. But Adams is, we know Adams, we know what he is. He's Rodgers' main guy, and he's going to have at minimum, 7 or 8 targets, likely 12, especially in this matchup where they don't have the pieces in the secondary to lock him down. When Adams can win in one-on-one coverage, that's when he gets a lot of targets. So unless Baltimore's rolling an extra man over to him every single play all game, which even then I think he still gets plenty of targets.
Yeah. So get a lot of Adams, get some Aaron Jones. Like you were talking about earlier, I think that's a good strategy in tournaments. Another strategy that I'll probably be doing is building a rule in lineup HQ to play at least one of Deontay Johnson or Najee Harris. I just think, I think the offense is going to be fine in this matchup. I know the total isn't huge, but it basically runs through those two guys. We can talk about Claypool as well, but the other expensive wide receivers that appear to be catching some ownership: Deebo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, and Deontay Johnson. Do you have a preference between the three? I'm kind of leaning towards Johnson, but I also like Harris. Deebo, I mean, he's getting the carries, but him playing running back has just really hurt his volume in the passing game. And I just don't think we can count on him breaking off 20-yard touchdowns every week. So I guess he makes sense as sort of a pivot off of Jeff Wilson, but he's going to be pretty popular too. And then Diggs, man, just let me down last week. Allen had a huge game and Diggs did nothing in overtime. Oh, man, I've been chasing the big game from him all season, and it seems like it just never comes on these main slates. But, who's your favorite between those three?
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, I think you're right about Diggs. And with Manny out, obviously, we know Gabe Davis is pretty chalky. And then with Devontae Adams carrying a lot of ownership, Deontay Johnson, like you mentioned, you'd hope Diggs would come in a little cheaper, but it's one of those ones where it's looking like he's going to catch some because of the quarterback, right? People want to play those top quarterbacks. He's such a natural stack with Josh Allen. I think a lot of people are going to play Allen, Diggs, Gabe Davis lineups, right? And so, Beasley and Dawson Knox might be the ones that come under owned a little bit in that offense. I mean, I love Diggs. I'm a huge Diggs guy, but I probably won't be playing a ton of him because I want to get to Adams. And the other guy of that group that I do like is Deontay. I will say on Deebo, still running a ton of routes. I think part of the reason he hasn't had as many catches because he still was over 80% routes of the percent of their dropbacks last week. He's running shallower stuff, but part of the reason he didn't catch a bunch of passes is they're just Kittle's had 2 explosive games. Sometimes that happens when you have a guy like George Kittle in the offense. I still think Deebo has plenty of potential for 5+ catch games, even though he is sort of working in as a running back. So there's still a ceiling there, in my opinion, but not the guy I am looking at is Deontay. I like that call about Deontay or Harris in a lot of lineups, or Claypool, like you noted. If those two guys fail, it's probably because Claypool hit on a long touchdown or two. But those are happening a lot less frequently for Claypool this year because Roethlisberger's arm strength has just really fallen off. So Deontay's a lot like Devontae Adams, frankly. The efficiency is not typically as strong as Adams, but the target rate we can bank on, targets per route run, market share, all of those things are so consistent that that's chalk that I'm willing to eat. I know the targets are going to be there.
All right, I like it and agree. Let's move on a little bit. Are there any other, guys above 7K that you have your eye on? It seems like the Cowboys, passing attack as a whole, we talked about it with Dak, is getting overlooked. CD Lamb doesn't appear to be very popular. We could also look to Amari Cooper. And then same with the Cincinnati guys you mentioned. Both teams wanted to run the ball a lot in that game, but Jamar Chase always has some slate breaking upside. So do you have any interest in him or T. Higgins? Maybe just hit on Cowboys and Bengals receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on how you're playing those games. If you want to play one of the Denver running backs you mentioned, I think it's a nice little mini correlation to bring in Chase or Higgins in these tournament lineups. And, you know, the way that those running backs or the way that that plays out, obviously Denver scores through their running backs, then it speeds up Cincinnati's passing game. And so, you know, that's sort of my same answer with Lamb. If you want to play, like I would play Lamb in Dak lineups. I'd be stacking that game. I think it's, especially with wide receivers this week and the way the slate is, there's not like a ton of game environments that look great on paper. It's like, what games are you playing to be higher scoring? And then I'm using my receiver slots to correlate, you know, as such, right? Like whatever quarterback I'm playing, I want to get obviously some exposure to the receivers in those games, but also if I'm playing a running back in a game that I'm expecting to be higher scoring, like if you are playing Gaskin or Robinson at some, you know, some chalky rates, I think you want to correlate those types of plays with a receiver on the other side in some of those games, because you're playing those games with really low totals to actually have some points for those running backs to be pretty productive. They like the game's going to need to probably go over. And so, you know, if you play, I mean, part of the reason maybe Michael Carter's catching some ownership is you can flip Devontae Parker on the other side, who is a pretty chalky receiver option. But, you know, some of those types of little mini correlations I think make sense. And so that's the way that I'm getting exposure. Some of these guys that love Lamb, love Chase, love Higgins basically every week. So I have no problem clicking the names of any of those guys if they fit.
What are you doing with Devontae Parker? Everyone loves playing the guy that, you know, is going to get extra buzz because of an injury late in the week. You know, Jalen Waddle is going to be out. Great matchup against the Jets. Great price point. We've only had one game from him back from injury, but it seems like such a good spot for him.
Yeah, I'm not playing him just because he's catching so much ownership. I agree with you. Like if he was, you know, 5 or 10% play, I probably would be putting him in some lineups. But yeah, I mean, there's, I think, some pretty clear ways where he doesn't necessarily smash. We are projecting out a little bit that, you know, things go reasonably well for their offense for him in terms of target share. I was just going to pull up his target share last week, but it wasn't great, I don't think, right?
Yeah, I think he only had 5.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, Gesicki can still be the guy. They've used like Albert Wilson. They've used some of these other dudes that it's definitely an offense that's willing to spread the ball around. The other element of it is like Tua's passing, you know, depth of target. It's largely tied to Waddle, who's been catching a lot of short passes, and Waddle is not playing. But certainly Parker is the more downfield guy, and Tua's been throwing underneath a ton. And so there's that element as well.
All right, signal or noise. Laquan Treadwell, is he their number one receiver for the Jags? I mean, I didn't think that we were talking about the Jags this much at any point during the season, but I mean, good matchup at home. He's what, 3,300 on DraftKings. Can we play him in tournaments?
I would say, as far as, is he the number one receiver? That's sort of you know, more on the noise side. One of the things I say is I kind of hate the conversation about like a stat, you know, like naming a number one. There are some spots where it makes obvious sense, like Adams or Deontay Johnson, like we're talking about, but there's teams where the guys that you would not really be clearly able to say who the number one or number two is because of the concentration of the offense or whatever. Like I'm immediately thinking of Chase and Higgins, who we were just talking about. You know, Boyd has not really been as involved. Their tight ends, their running backs are not as involved. There's not a clear number one, but those guys, I feel really confident in what their roles are. Treadwell might be the number one for Jacksonville, but like this is a very unconcentrated pass attack where I don't feel confident in what any of their roles are. And so that's the way that I would answer that. It could be O'Shaughnessy, who leads the team in targets at tight end. It could be Marvin Jones. It could be Chenault. It could be Tavon Austin, for crying out loud. He's only running like 30% routes. He's not a guy you'd ever play, but he is seeing a decent number of targets in the routes that he does run. And so like when you see these part-time guys come in and immediately get targeted at a high rate, I mean, we had that with the Saints a little bit this year with like Deontay Harris. Whenever he would play, he'd be in a rotational role, but he's immediately getting targets at a really high rate, which tells you something about, you know, Marcus Callaway and Traquan Smith. They're not earning targets at a strong rate on a per route basis. Treadwell has had a couple games that have popped a little bit. I think you can throw him in. I think you can, like what you're saying could be right. Like he could be the number one. He could get 9 or 10 targets. He's cheap. He's low owned. If you want to mix him in, I don't think it's crazy. But it's just not something that I can bank on at all, you know?
Yeah, thanks for talking me off the ledge. I didn't want to play him, but yeah, I was just looking at the numbers, and I like that you said, there's not always a wide receiver one. Yeah, the Jags have like 3 wide receiver threes.
Right, exactly.
There's no one there. So, who is your favorite guy to pair with Kyler Murray? Christian Kirk's probably going to be pretty popular, but you got AJ Green, you got Rondell Moore. You could even pair him up with, Chase Edmonds, since he's such a good pass catching back. Who do you like pairing up Kyler with?
Yeah, I think the Evans thing is fun. I think Kirk is going to be sort of the obvious one. He has tended to step up a little bit more when the opportunity's been there. I don't, you mentioned earlier, I don't like olds, but like AJ Green seems like pretty decent value. I mean, he's had games where he's looked horrible. He's had games where he's looked good. My take is like he didn't look as good in the games where Hopkins was out, in part because like I think part of the reason he's been pretty efficient is Hopkins drawing coverage, like the traditional, like, does somebody else draw coverage in this offense? When Hopkins is in there, Green is clearly the second outside weapon. When Hopkins is out, Green is clearly now the top outside weapon, because the other guy they play on the outside is Antoine Wesley, who's not going to do anything. And like, if you're crazy, you could play him, but I'm not playing him at all. So anyway, Kirk's going to be a little bit more in the slot. Moore's issue is like the routes aren't necessarily huge. He's also a heavy slot option. His routes really only jumped when both Green and Hopkins were both out for one game. Kirk kicked outside. Moore got the slot to himself. It sounds like we're going to get Green and Wesley on the outside again, Kirk in the slot. We'll get more of Moore than usual, and probably more design plays for him. Some of the kind of Debo-y stuff that they do, he could hit for some explosive plays. He hasn't for several weeks. Early in the year, though, we saw that explosiveness with some big plays. So I still think there's the potential for the high efficiency game. Ertz has also hurt him too, though, because Ertz plays out of the slot. They do a lot of 4 receiver sets, but some of that will be with Kirk and Ertz as the 2 slot guys and more off the field. And so Moore's a tough one for me in DFS. I think, there's explosive play ceiling, but not a guy that I'm going to go to this week. And Kirk is really the one that I feel the most confident with who's available. And especially with Green kind of stumbling when Hopkins was available the other times, not necessarily wanting to go to Green. Kirk's the one that I like the most, but I could see playing Green. He'd be the second option. And then I like your call about Edmonds too. Like if you want to go Kyler, Edmonds, Kirk, I think that's pretty interesting.
All right, so we're getting down to our last 10 minutes here. Are there any receivers that you wanted to mention that we didn't cover, or should we go over to tight end?
No, I think we're good.
All right.
Correlate them is the way I'm thinking of it.
Correlate. That's always a good advice there. If you haven't signed up for RG Premium, you can do single sport or you can do combo options. You can get $10 off your first month of RG Premium DFS. Devin will drop a link for that in the chat. And then let's get to tight end. And then we have a few questions from the chat that we'll get to round out the show. So what are you doing at tight end? Is George Kittle going to break the slate again? Are we looking to spend down? Generally, I try to spend up on Fanduel because it's a little bit easier to get those expensive tight ends in there. And I usually try to spend down on DraftKings, but I kind of want to, use some of that extra salary on a really good tight end this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely viable. I do think like football is definitely an ebb and flow sport. And so I do think it's kind of interesting. Kittle's like a classic example right now where nobody really wanted to play him 2 weeks ago at a higher price tag. It felt like his projections were, not something you wanted to touch. But we know Kittle has ceiling, like inherently. We're just sort of aware of that. But now that he's hit the ceiling 2 weeks in a row, everyone wants to play him again at an even higher price tag. And it's like nothing changed. This is still George Kittle. It's the exact same thing. He can still have a floor game in this spot as well. I do think he's a good play, obviously. I mean, I guess the biggest thing that changes is like he's crushing over these last 2 weeks. The target share is really strong, but it can certainly flow back is sort of my point. We don't typically see guys do what Kittle did over the last 2 weeks for 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row. Like eventually they have a down week as well. So the tight ends, like, I mean, I think he's fine. The tight ends I'm looking at, like, I like playing Buffalo through Dawson Knox with Emmanuel Sanders out. Knox has been their vertical receiver at times as a tight end. Sanders being out is going to open up the Gabe Davis stuff, but it could be Knox who gets a lot of air yards. There's some games that could go back to the Chiefs game. I think he had like 3 catches, 110 yards or something, a couple touchdowns. Maybe it was a lot of downfield passing in that game to Knox. He's definitely been able to be sort of a vertical air yards type threat. And if that happens, That's not good for Gabe Davis. You're working off of that chalk. I think Gesicki is interesting, certainly. I mean, Parker's going to be chalky. Gesicki's going to be a little chalky. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think you could play Kittle. It's sort of an extension of receiver. Like, I'm trying to build my tight end into my stacks as well. Games that I'm projecting to shoot out, the quarterbacks I'm playing, maybe key position players, even in games where I'm not playing the quarterback, I'm obviously kind of expecting those games to shoot out a little bit. I'm going to correlate, to the other side.
Yeah, I like all those calls. Mark Andrews is in an interesting spot as well. Does his projection change much if it's Lamar or Huntley? It kind of seems like he's a decent play regardless.
He's a good play regardless. I mean, I think Huntley actually targeted him at a really high rate last week. It might even be arguably better for him with Huntley. I mean, the Ravens were still willing to throw, and Huntley seemed less willing to push the ball down the field than Lamar. And so you might actually get more chance, slightly more chance for that Andrews 30% target share game if Huntley's in.
What about the tight ends in the Cowboys-Giants game? Dalton Schultz kind of seems like he was a lot better when Gallup was out. Is that right? Yep. And then Evan Ingram just consistently letting us down in DFS like 4 years in a row. I mean, I don't know what to do with him, but he's only 3,100. He's kind of popping in our projections. My favorite value is probably going to be James O'Shaughnessy, just because I need more Jags exposure. I mean, why not?
Absolutely. No, O'Shaughnessy makes sense because he can definitely lead their team in targets, and he is cheap. I mean, one of the things at tight end is like it doesn't take a lot to get there, and we can free up a lot of salary when we play these really cheap guys. So I can see that argument. The other guys you said I'm basically not playing. I mean, Schultz would be a decent second option in like Dak doubles, if not for the fact that he's been so good all year that his price is still pretty expensive. And it's pretty hard to justify paying that when his target rate, when the other three receivers are all in there. I don't have this stat. I wish I had like a targets per route run when the other three are also running a route. Because there's been a lot of games where like those receivers have played partial games, but just having watched it, that's something I've written about in Signals all year. When those three receivers are out there, Schultz tends to get targeted less. Yeah. Like I said, if he was at 3,500 or something like that, I'd probably throw him in some stacks because there's still the potential that on 5 targets, he gets 2 touchdowns, right? Like he's shown us that ability as well. And that can get you there at tight end pretty easily. But at 4,900, it's not something I want to do. At least, it's 4,900 on DraftKings. All
right, that should wrap up our tight ends. Let's get to a couple of listener questions. This is from Mr. Wade. Are we satisfied with where projected ownership is landing on FanDuel? And personally, I am satisfied because I have been terrible about projecting ownership throughout my DFS career. That's why I'm not on the projected ownership team. So yeah, I think they do a great job. I don't know if you have the projections in front of you, but I always trust them. So from Shirtless Bobby, for FD Cash, we have Deontay Foreman, Deontay Johnson, and Kittle, or Zeke, Debo, and Pitts. I can read it back to you if you need it.
What do you think? I don't play a ton of cash. Bond for is usually our cash answer.
Yeah, I mean, Zeke seems like the safer option over Foreman, but I like Deontay over Debo. I like Kittle over Pitts. So I'm going to go with Foreman, Deontay, and Kittle. Is that crazy? Foreman and cash, is that too risky?
No, I don't think so. I think going to those running backs in cash makes more sense. I mean, they're definitely good points per dollar plays.
I would probably prefer Jeff Wilson, but I'm a sucker. So yeah, in cash anyway. And then from Floors Mark, if you're stacking Dallas and the Giants, which Giants players are you comfortable bringing it back with?
I mean, I think if you're stacking that, I think you're playing Saquon. The Giant, like the Dallas pass rush is good. There's the potential certainly for, I don't even know which of those receivers I would pick. So I think I would be playing Saquon to finally hit on a 65-yard touchdown run. I mean, we know he can do that. He has not shown that type of explosiveness this year. But if I'm stacking that game, the way I see it shooting out is that, or maybe, Darius Slayton hits on a 1 touchdown. Like that would be the one name that like been pretty consistently involved, but he's been less involved when their other receivers are involved. Who's even active for the Giants? I've barely even looked at the Giants, to be honest with you.
I mean, every week everyone's questionable. So right. Yeah, it's hard.
I think Galladay, Shepard, and Slayton will be the main 3 receiver set, but even just having those guys available kind of knocks Slayton's routes down. I think they came down a little bit last week. I mean, Shepard, maybe, I don't know. I'd probably just play Barkley if I was stacking that game.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. All right. Any final hot takes for the week before we get out of here?
Yeah, we usually do like a conviction thing. The one I'll say is Aaron Jones this week was going to be mine, which I want to be clear, from a points per dollar perspective and from projections, it does not look like a good play. It's purely an ownership and leverage play, because I do think he still has the potential for a 3 TD type game, even though he's sort of in a split backfield and pretty pricey, in a way that, makes him such an optimal running back on a slate without a lot of running back ceiling. I mean, that's basically it. I'm chasing running back ceiling. So that's sort of my take there.
I love it. I'm going to go with Jags win by 20 and Jeff Wilson scores at least 2 touchdowns. So we appreciate every single one of you joining us. I had a lot of fun filling in for Eric. He'll be back next week. Gretch, love your stuff. If you haven't signed up, definitely recommend checking out Stealing Signals newsletter. And with that, we're going to get out of here. Good luck, everyone. And see you next week.
Fantasy Bar 6 plays for you for week 15 on Yahoo, including some of my favorite value plays, some correlations I'm looking at, a quarterback wide receiver pairing I think you need this week, and of course, my favorite play of the week. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 15 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. This time talking some Yahoo with 6 of my favorite plays. Thank you, as always, for stopping by the Fantasy Bar and checking out the video. Now, before we get into things, as always, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Get notified when these videos are coming out. Take advantage of a special offer over on Yahoo right below us in the comment section. Yahoo doing it big once again, giving away free money in their baller contest. Take advantage of this overlay. Don't see it very often. If you're into sports betting, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer. That link down there as well. Tons of information there to check out, to compare the odds across different books, analytics, trends, everything you need to make some smart bets. Check it out today. scoresandodds.com/beer. All right, let's get into the plays here for week 15. Let's start at the running back position with Sony Michel. $19. Now, we know COVID, a big issue here this week. The Rams, certainly one of those teams that's dealing with. In fact, Darrell Henderson, one of the guys on the COVID list right now. If he's able to return, I still like Sony Michel. I think he's done enough here over the last couple of weeks. The Rams have to know by now. We're here back at the Fantasy Bar 6 plays for you for week 15 on Yahoo, including some of my favorite value plays, some correlations I'm looking at, a quarterback wide receiver pairing I think you need this week. And of course, my favorite play of the week. Who is it? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 15 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. This time talking some Yahoo with 6 of my favorite plays. Thank you, as always, for stopping by the Fantasy Bar and checking out the video. Now, before we get into things, as always, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Get notified when these videos are coming out. Take advantage of a special offer over on Yahoo right below us in the comment section. Yahoo doing it big once again, giving away free money in their baller contest. Take advantage of this overlay. Don't see it very often. If you're into sports betting, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer. That link down there as well. Tons of information there to check out, to compare the odds across different books, analytics, trends, everything you need to make some smart bets. Check it out today. scoresandodds.com/beer. All right, let's get into the plays here for week 15. Let's start at the running back position with Sony Michel. $19. Now, we know COVID, a big issue here this week. The Rams, certainly one of those teams that's dealing with. In fact, Darrell Henderson, one of the guys on the COVID list right now. If he's able to return, I still like Sony Michel. I think he's done enough here over the last couple of weeks. The Rams have to know by now. Darrell Henderson, not a workhorse type running back. I think Sony Michel going to be the lead of this committee moving forward. Maybe that's a hot take, but That's certainly the way I see this playing out. If Henderson is out, all systems go here on Sony Michel. So really love in both scenarios here, even if Henderson is able to return. We're talking 23.5 touches per game over the last 2 here. So that workhorse type running back, the Rams certainly want to lean on. I think Michel fits that bill more than Darrell Henderson. I'm not calling Michel more talented than Henderson. I just think he fits better as a lead running back. And whoever it is, even if they're both getting work here, Seattle's certainly giving in this department second most fantasy points allowed to this position. So we'll update if we need to, but even if Henderson's back, I love Michel. If Henderson's out, he becomes one of my favorite plays easily on this slate at under $20. All right, let's go to the other side of that game. A little correlation here at tight end with Gerald Everett, just $12. Now, tight end a little tough this week. We're missing a lot of the higher end guys. Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, if he's back, are not on this slate. Kittle, questionable here. So Gerald Everett, a guy that I'm going to go to and save some money on here. Some pretty solid games here over the last couple of weeks. Nothing that's slate breaking, anything like that. If I can find a $12 tight end that has a shot to find the end zone, it's certainly what I want to look for. And he's done that now in 2 of the last 3 games. Both happen to be road games. A little stat I found interesting. And Seattle, maybe without DK Metcalf here, we saw Tyler Lockett placed on the COVID list. So if they're down a wideout, makes this play even more intriguing. Even if those guys are back, the Rams, bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to this position. And you get a little revenge narrative cherry on top here. Gerald Everett, a solid value tight end this week at just $12. All right, we saved some money there. Let's spend up at the quarterback position with Josh Allen, $34. So he showed us last week. Let's not forget about me, guys. I'm still here. I can still provide a very high ceiling, and we certainly saw that in that game against Tampa Bay, that furious comeback in the end. Now you get a home game, very high total here for Buffalo, a spot they desperately need a win here, and a price that has dropped $7 on Yahoo. Doesn't sound like a lot, but from 41 to 34, that opens up a lot of possibilities in your lineup. In fact, second lowest price we've seen on him all season long here on Yahoo. Now the matchup, not the greatest. We generally love to target those easier matchups. Carolina, been tough on quarterbacks, no doubt, but Buffalo projected to score almost 4 touchdowns in this game. Josh Allen going to be a big reason why. I know he's dealing with a toe injury. Maybe that zaps a little bit from his running upside. I still think there's plenty of upside there. I think this price is too cheap. I think their backs are against the wall, and I think you see Josh Allen respond in a big way here and lead his team to a big victory over the Carolina Panthers. All right, we like Josh Allen. Who do we pair him with? Steph Diggs, too easy. We're going to wide receiver, Gabriel Davis, $12. So no Emmanuel Sanders this week, looking doubtful. So it's going to be the trio of Diggs, Beasley, and Davis. Davis, the cheapest of those 3. The other 2, yes, they certainly see a ton of targets and snaps as well. But 84% of the snaps last week. We know this team loves to utilize 3 wide receiver formations. 8 targets in that game against Tampa Bay. I think you could see a similar output here against this Carolina secondary. Touchdowns now in back-to-back weeks. So we know this guy electric when they get around the red zone. And Carolina, when you look at the last 4 weeks, middle of the pack against wide receivers. So maybe we're seeing a little chink in the armor here of this Carolina defense. Buffalo, again, very high team total. Gabriel Davis, big-time upside at a very low $12 cost. All right, back to the running back. Again, we're going to tiptoe around COVID here. We're going to go to Miami. We're going to go with Myles Gaskin, $21. Now, as of this recording, I realize we don't have clarity on this situation. We couldn't avoid every team that had COVID. We got to make some stands here. If anything changes in this pick, in that Miami backfield, we will certainly get back in the comment section to make the adjustments here. But I'm expecting him to clear these protocols. Vaccinated player, just needs a couple clean tests here. And if he is back in that lineup, he will be the workhorse here for this Miami team. Now, last time against the Jets, 26 touches in that game. I know the production was not great. It's kind of been the story here with Myles Gaskin. But if I can get a guy 25, 26 touches at right around $20, I'm going to go back to the well here. Did score a touchdown in that game. And the Jets, we know, easily the worst team against running backs. It's not even close. Giving up 4 more touchdowns than the next closest team and almost 4 fantasy points per game of the second place team. Target this matchup. If it's Gaskin, great. If it's not, we will update things in the comment section. But I'm expecting Myles Gaskin back in that lineup. Going to be in my lineups here against the Jets this week. as well. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play on Yahoo for week 15. Before we do that, we want to continue our Beast of the Week contest, free to play. All you have to do, get in the comment section right below the video and guess fantasy points for my favorite play here on Yahoo. The closest guess going to win themselves a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. Let's wrap this baby up. My favorite play for week 15, you know, Mass, Beast of the Week. All right, Beast, time we owe you one more wide receiver. A guy in a great spot this week. We're going to Dallas. We're rolling with CeeDee Lamb of the Cowboys, this week's Beast of the Week. Here's another price drop. We talked about it with Josh Allen. CeeDee Lamb's price has dropped as well, all the way down to $26, very close to teammate Amari Cooper. I want to buy on Lamb here. I think he's got the highest ceiling of this bunch. I don't hate Cooper. Hell, I don't hate the double stack here in this game against the Giants. But Lamb starting to put that consistency on the board. At least 6 receptions now in 5 of the last 7 games. The last matchup against the Giants, 484-1. And we know the Giants struggle against this position. Bottom 10 in the league in fantasy points allowed. 2 wide receivers. This Dallas offense in a very good spot. Heavy favorites here. High team total here. Get some exposure. And I'm going to do it here with CeeDee Lamb. Easily my favorite play on the board in this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that'll wrap us up for week 15 here on Yahoo. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, hit me up in that comment section right below the video. Don't forget fantasy points for CeeDee Lamb here.
You're tuned in to Rotogrinders NFL Crunch Time. Thanks for sticking with us right here on Sunday. It's football. There's COVID everywhere. NBA games are getting postponed. We don't know if we're going to be back for Crunch Time for NBA, but stay tuned and we'll keep you posted as games are flying off the board. But we know we have a full slate of NFL action. So we have that. And I have Dan and Keith with me here. And of course, Devin working the boards here. So what's going on, Mr. Tuttle? How are you today?
Doing all right. I was we were talking pre-show. I was saying I'm happy I don't have to deal with the NBA content today, but I only get the weekends off with that. I'll be right back on ownership projections and all that jazz tomorrow, and it's an absolute disaster. Thankfully, the NFL seems to have figured it out at least slightly. Also, pretty a lot easier to manage when they're only playing 1 game a week. So hopefully NFL keeps kicking here, and hopefully we can make some money playing DFS today.
Keith, how is Illinois treating you?
A little chilly up here, a little chillier than where I'm at in Oklahoma City, but yeah, it's not too bad. It was actually really mild the last couple of days. It's cooling off now though, but yeah, it's a tough situation in the sports scene now. We lost a couple NFL games, so we've got a shorter slate here. Not the best slate I've ever seen. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but not a lot to love here.
No, definitely not a lot to love. And yeah, here comes Outlaw Tour and esports again. So buckle up, folks. Hopefully not. Anyway, fairly busy slate for this, the smaller number of games we have here. Definitely some condensed ownerships to some specific teams. We're seeing some the Miami game seems to be carrying some numbers. Anyway, I guess let me just do some housekeeping stuff quick. Couple of notes and promos here. We're in Discord now for our live chat, folks. So make sure you are in the Discord channel instead of YouTube. So check out our Rotogrinders Discord. We're in the live stream chat channel. DFS OGs League. If you're playing on Fanduel this week, sign up for the DFS OGs Fanduel contest. Compete with Beard, Chop, Noto, and all the OGs. Tuttle, you're kind of an OG. Maybe you're getting shortchanged there. Anyway, fanduel.com/OGs show. I see Beard Shop and Noto on here and, just leaving Tuttle hanging. Anyway, BetMGM, we have BetMGM bonus codes, GRINDERSBET over there on BetMGM. Bet $10 to get $200 instantly when your team scores a touchdown. That's GRINDERSBET, and you can use that bonus code over on BetMGM. On Yahoo, another bonus code, Grinders25 with a capital G. On Yahoo, Grinders25 for a free $25 bonus on your first deposit. And of course, if you're not rocking with us for Rotogrinders Premium, you probably should be. A lot of customizable packages. We have great ownership projections, the whole 9 yards, audio, premium video, everything you need to know right here. I would hate to be playing in a live final this weekend, guys. I don't know about you, but of course I'd love to be there, but at the same time, it would probably be a headache. So thanks for filling in for us, Keith. And you know what, since you're the new guy, the guest today, I guess we'll start with you. Talk to me about quarterback today, Keith, and then we'll throw it over to Tuttle.
All right. You do have a couple of good options here at the top end. I think Josh Allen or Kyler Murray on FanDuel is definitely where you're looking. Seen different places have different projections on these guys. Couple have Allen ahead, couple have Murray ahead. I think I prefer Murray just because of the matchup. I have respect for that Carolina defense. Murray without Hopkins, obviously, but still some capable receivers there. Should get Chase Edmonds back, or did get Chase Edmonds back as well. So Murray over Allen just slightly. Either one is fine. If you're looking to save a little bit of money for cash, I do like Dak in the mid-range. Very nice price on DraftKings at 6.5. And if you need to go even further down than that, Tua certainly looks like he's in play against this bad Jets defense. Getting Devontae Parker back, just think he's a nice target there. So Tua's price at 5.7 is very attractive as well.
Agreed. Tuttle, what's going on, man? Talk to me about quarterback today.
Yeah, so Keith nailed most of the cash game guys. I think Tua is going to be the popular guy on DraftKings in cash games. I think that's interesting, though, because it seems like cash games on DraftKings specifically, there are a lot of Miami players. And that kind of seems like a decent way to try to find some leverage, is not depending on Miami to do very well. So I think he makes a fine point per dollar play. But I do prefer getting up to Dak if you can on DraftKings. He's only $800 more. I think Dak's a solid play. And then what Keith mentioned on FanDuel specifically, you just pay up. I mean, there's no reason not to pay up. Kyler is my preferred option. Like Keith said, Allen still has, he's playing, but he had that foot sprain. So I'm kind of shorting Allen this week, and I'm in favor of playing Kyler. One guy that it'll be interesting to see where ownership comes in on, Aaron Rodgers. We got news that, we knew the Baltimore defense was already decimated, and then we got news Jimmy Smith's going to be out again with COVID. So Rodgers is cheap on FanDuel specifically, $7,600. He's $1,200 less than Kyler. So I do think he's an interesting option on FanDuel. He's a little bit tougher to justify in DK because he's priced a lot closer to Kyler, but probably will lead to lower ownership being priced similarly right there. So Aaron Rodgers is somebody I like quite a bit for tournaments, but I like him a little bit better on FanDuel than on DraftKings. Yeah,
I was going to give a one-liner, and that was it. Hear me out. Can you knock me on this? I'm using Rodgers for my single entry, and I'm pairing him with Devontae. The Jimmy Smith news I thought was pretty big. Everyone says, well, the double coverage, Baltimore blitz is like the third highest amount in the league, so I think there'll be some room for Devontae today. I don't mind that 90.5 prop number now, especially now without Jimmy Smith, but I think Rodgers is sneaky. How do you feel about this? I'm going Rodgers, Devontae. Maybe a little bit of a reach here, but I'm playing with the Cardinals playing ahead and paying up for James Conner because I don't really think anyone's going to play him. You have any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, nobody's playing Conner. So I could see it happening. Yeah,
really day, really bad day.
It's a good spot. People are worried about Chase Edmonds being back. Obviously, we still don't really know what that's going to look like. We don't know how. There's a lot of uncertainty, I guess, is the best way to say it. And usually when there's a lot of uncertainty, the highest upside is to do what everybody else is not doing, or what the consensus is. So I think that's fine. I will say I do think you can double stack Rodgers too. I know you mentioned Devontae, but some of his pass catchers are really cheap. Ellen Lazard's 4K, Marquez Valdez on DraftKings, Marquez Valdez Scantling. Baltimore has allowed the most pass completions of 20 plus yards this season. MVS is kind of like he's hard to predict. He's very volatile, but this is definitely a good spot. And even Josiah DeGuara, their pass catching tight end now, is 2,600 on DraftKings, 4,600 on FanDuel. I think he's fine as well.
Showdown special himself. Just another tight end to add to the list. All right, Keith, running back. A lot of ownership in this Miami New York game. You know, Gaskin's pretty popular. Michael Carter shares are being found. James Robinson, life after Urban Meyer, and he's really cheap. Are you going James Robinson? And talk to me about the rest of this group.
Yeah, James Robinson, from a point per dollar perspective, definitely stands out on this slate. Great play. Coaching change, hopefully that unlocks him a little bit. Nice matchup against Houston here. So really like that one. Najee at the top, should be grabbing some ownership, but there really isn't a ton to spend up for. So from a raw points perspective, Najee just has a great role. He's going to be out there for 95+% of the snaps. I think it's a fine matchup for him. You mentioned Gaskin, a little bit of concern with that backfield and some people coming back, but great matchup against the Jets. Very nice price tag on him. I think he's completely fine as well. Jeff Wilson, a guy that underperformed last week for us. I think you can go right back to him with this matchup against Atlanta. Not sure how Debo works in, but Wilson should be the lead guy there. And the price tag is very attractive at $5K on DraftKings. Michael Carter, another guy, very cheap, 4.7 on DraftKings. Tevin Coleman coming back, so a little bit of uncertainty around his workload as well. I think you can take a shot on either of the Denver guys. Prefer Javonte slightly, just a more talented guy, but Gordon's going to be involved as well. For tournaments, one of my favorite plays who doesn't look like he's going to get played all that much, Joe Mixon. Going into Denver is never a fun spot for a running back. And Denver is favored in this game, but I think Cincinnati keeps this close at a minimum. And in that case, Mixon should have a great role here against Denver. Love the ownership number on him. He's one of my favorite spend ups for tournaments. And then for tournaments, Devin Singletary is another guy in that, like around some of the other, like his same price as Jeff Wilson. Prefer him over Michael Carter. In this Buffalo offense, Zach Moss is inactive again, so Singletary could have a pretty nice role here, and you're not going to see much ownership on him.
You know, we haven't talked about any Dallas Cowboys yet. So, Tuttle, do you have a take on Zeke in this group of running backs today?
Yeah, I mean, Fanduel is the place you're playing him if you're playing him. 6,700 there. I hate playing Zeke. I hate it. And I have not played him pretty much at all this season, but it's a decent enough spot. He's cheap enough. Pollard's only going to see a handful of snaps, it sounds like. So I'm fine playing Zeke on FanDuel today. I'm going elsewhere on DK. I don't think you need to do it. But when you look at like pricing dynamics on FanDuel specifically, Najee's 2,100 more than Zeke. I love Najee. I think he's a good play in his own right, but you just get such a big discount if you go Zeke and James Robinson there that you can really just do whatever you want with the rest of your lineup. So I do like Zeke on FanDuel. I think some other interesting situations. David Johnson's really cheap. He's like Rex Burkhead's been limited all week. I believe Burkhead is active, but still, I would still think David Johnson gets a decent amount of the touches there. I don't know if you guys remember the first week these Jacksonville Houston squared off. I think they rushed it was something insane. Mark Ingram came back from the dead. They rushed for like 260 total yards or something crazy like that. David Johnson's, I think, is a decent play. Michael Carter, I think, is another decent cheap option. Ty Johnson was kind of a weirdly scratched, inactive, which would open up more passing game work theoretically for why did I just lose it? For Michael Carter. So I think he's in play as a cheap option. And then I did want to touch on, this is the week I'm not playing Jeff Wilson Jr., so he's probably going to do well. But it's just so like, I've done it the 2 weeks, regrettably. It just feels like anytime they're going to get in a scoring situation, they're just going to use Debo close to the goal line. And so if that's the case, then you're really just trying to get raw yardage totals from Jeff Wilson Jr. And we haven't seen him really be able to do that yet. So I'm ready to be wrong on that. But I'm fading Wilson this week. And I think he's a pretty strong fade at the projected ownership.
Yeah, can we talk about the Debo situation? And Keith, I saw you wrote Debo up for scores and odds, and that my gut when I saw that line was like, had to be an anomaly that, Kittle saw 27 targets the last 2 weeks and Debo saw one and he's running routes. Debo's running routes and he got the ball once through the air. What's going on there? But if there's any quarterback coach combo you can't trust as far as you can throw them, it's Shanahan and Jimmy G. So when you wrote that up, I was like, man, my thought process was similar. But what's your, the Niners are obviously well in play here. So talk to me about Debo, Ayuk, and the rest of the receivers.
Yeah, the crux of that argument was the routes that Debo was running. Now, George Kittle was just absolutely smashing over the middle. And I think Garoppolo just continued to look his way because he wasn't, they weren't stopping him at all. So he just kept going back to what was working. I thought it was encouraging that Debo was running a large amount of the routes. Jeff Wilson might have been a little bit banged up still last week as well. So the combination of Jeff Wilson getting a little bit healthier and Debo running the routes, I felt good jumping on the over for Debo Samuel's receiving yards. I think he still works in at running back a little bit, but I think he sees quite a bit larger role in the passing game this week. And the matchup is much better against this really weak Atlanta defense.
Agreed. Okay, wide receiver, Devontae Adams at the top, probably in play for cash games. It's super easy to get him this week, especially on FanDuel. Who else? Weird week. Jamar Chase, tough matchup. Denver. You mentioned Denver. Talk to me about the rest of this group here.
Yeah, Devontae Adams in play at the top. You mentioned Jimmy Smith being out for Baltimore. I think that helps here. I don't love the game environment, but Adams has one of the best roles in football. Cooper Kupp getting moved off the slate. Devontae makes sense as a spend up for me. I think you can include Stephon Diggs in that conversation, and Deontay Johnson would be the other one I highlight. Kind of expensive. Johnson been seeing 10 targets every week, so love him as a play. Diggs has a tough matchup against Carolina, but no Emmanuel Sanders. Just a team that passes a ton. So love Diggs at 7,700. Let's see here for cash. Devontae Parker just too cheap at 4,300. Coming back should be the number one wide receiver here. I think Cole Beasley's in play at 4,900. I do like Gabriel Davis as a punt play as well. Mentioned the Buffalo passing offense and how much they throw it there. For tournament, CeeDee Lamb is somebody I really like. All three of Dallas's wide receivers healthy. It makes it tough to figure out that situation, but I do like Lamb against this Giants offense. Christian Kirk is going to get played quite a bit. I do like the pivot over to AJ Green for tournament. Should see far less ownership on Green than Kirk, but we've seen Green with a really nice role here in Arizona. Looks way better than he did in Cincinnati. He just didn't want to be there anymore. So I love AJ Green as a tournament play.
Yeah, I like AJ Green a lot. Talk to me a little bit more about Gabe Davis, Tuttle. I know came in, played over 80% of the snaps after Sanders got hurt, super cheap. We know Buffalo doesn't run, and Carolina's defense is just good across the board. So we know the ball's going up in the air most likely. 14-point spread there. I don't know. Gabe Davis, Cole Beasley, obviously, I don't know. Is it an ownership thing? And for large tournaments, do you have interest in either of them?
Yeah, I think both are fine plays. I do think it's interesting. Keith kind of mentioned Cooper Kupp's off the slate and pricing dynamics in general this week. I feel like a different spot, Gabe Davis and even Cole Beasley at these price tags would be pushing 30% ownership. And they're about half that right now, just because there's not a lot of people to pay up for. And then most people are playing Devontae Parker over Davis or Beasley is kind of the cheap guy to go to. Both are good plays. And again, I think they'd be higher owned on a different slate. I don't think they're really necessary on FanDuel if you're playing over there, just different pricing dynamics again. But I think on DraftKings, they make reasonable value options. Another guy, we talked a little bit about the Arizona receiving situation. Rondale Moore is another guy. I would have really liked Rondale Moore if James Conner was out this week, because there's a potential they could have used him just a couple more rushing attempts or something like that and get him involved there. But I think an interesting point that I know I personally overlooked when we had the situation before with DeAndre Hopkins out is that Colt McCoy was out, or Kyler Hopkins was out, or I can't say names. Kyler Murray was out all those games as well, and Colt McCoy was the starting quarterback in those games that Hopkins was out. So we don't really have a good sample of how things are going to break in terms of where the ball is going to go in a situation like this with Kyler Murray back and healthy. And so when that's the case, I just prefer taking the guy or shot at the guys that are going to be lower owned. So Keith mentioned AJ Green and Rondell Moore is that other guy for me too. His ADOT is terrible, legitimately 1.7 ADOT on the season. But maybe they work him a little bit more deep with Kyler Murray back.
I'm so spoiled to live in a state where I have access to Fanduel and Draftkings Sportsbook, and you don't appreciate how smooth the interfaces work on those until you take advantage of some other promos on some other sportsbooks. I'm not going to mention any names, but I've been sitting here since the show started. Now they suddenly can't find my location, or it's something else. I was on support with them yesterday. I told them what my first car color was when I was 17. They're lucky I even remembered. Oh my God, with all the brain cells I burned in college. So it's like, come on, man, cut me some slack. Anyway, it's about 12:50. Start locking up those lineups. Tight end, and then we'll take some questions. Talk to me about tight end, Keith.
On FanDuel, I think it's pretty easy. George Kittle has absolutely smashed the last couple of weeks. Should have another huge role here in a great matchup against Atlanta. So I think you're playing Kittle on FanDuel. DraftKings, it's a little tougher to get up there. Gesicki is in a great spot with Waddle out. He should run into plenty of targets here against a bad Jets defense. So I really like Gesicki in the mid range. It's kind of ugly after that. So those are definitely my top two. If you're trying to punt it, there's nothing really great underneath 3K here today. James O'Shaughnessy, I think, is the best cheap option at 3.2. Don't mind him. For tournaments, I will mention Shane Zylstra also, if you just want to fully on punt it. For Detroit, he's in a little bit of a split there with Brock Wright, but it's a punt play for you if you need it. For tournaments, I do like Freiermuth at 4.5. I think that's a very fair price. Touchdown equity. You need him to find the end zone, obviously. Deontay soaks up most of the target volume. Claypool obviously still there, but Freiermuth does have some touchdown upside. And Mark Andrews is the other one I'll mention. Lamar's still questionable. We don't know if he's going to play, but I'm comfortable playing Andrews even if Huntley is in there. We saw Huntley have quite a bit of success as a passer last week, and he was targeting Andrews a good amount. So I do like Andrews in tournaments.
Yeah, I think you're right. We just got a push notification that via Jay Glazer, Lamar is out. So
Okay.
I think we kind of assumed that, but it's good to have that validation at 12:50 Eastern for a 4:00 game for once. By the way, the NBA games are just flying off the board, folks. So I don't know if we're going to have a slate later. Expect some Adam Silver news release on Twitter or something within the next couple hours. Anyway, Tuttle, talk to me about tight end. Then we'll take some questions from the Discord.
Yeah, just to reiterate Keith's point for him, even with Huntley throwing, Andrews is a fine tournament play. I have Huntley's target distribution in front of me. And Andrews leads the way with 19, then Bateman 14, Devontae Freeman 12, Duvernay 12, Marquise Brown 9, Watkins 6. So if you want to make an argument against anybody with Huntley back or under center, it would be Marquise Brown. But I still think he's actually a fine tournament option too if you're looking to stack that game. I like Keith's Shane Zylstra call, as crazy as it sounds. Josiah DeGuara was the other guy that I kind of mentioned as a really cheap option if you want to go that route. If you're not into playing Jeff Wilson Jr. like myself on FanDuel, then it is kind of a different build where you're not necessarily having the money to pay up for George Kittle. And in those builds, I prefer Zach Ertz. He's only 5,300 on FanDuel. Again, Hopkins out should help in terms of target share as well as touchdown equity. So Ertz would be the kind of the cheap option, my preferred cheap option on FanDuel.
All right. Anything else we missed that you want to touch on before we take some questions, guys?
So I hate playing chalk defenses, but I don't know if you saw this, the Carolina Panthers kicking situation. Their kicker got hurt, and PJ Walker's attempting field goals in practice and not doing a very good job.
Oh my God.
So they're going to be going for it in all situations. Like a shutout, I would not be surprised if they ended up getting shut out. But if you're not into playing chalk defenses, I do like the 49ers quite a bit against Atlanta. I think the D-line versus O-line situation is really good there for sacks. Matt Ryan's a statue these days. So 49ers is my pivot off the chalk defense, but I do think the Bills are a really good defense.
Since we're there, Keith, you got anything else defensive side of things?
Love Tuttle's 49ers call. If you can pay up a little bit, the Cowboys are in a great spot also.
Good old Mike Glennon. I agree. All right, let's take some questions from the Discord here. All right. 12.
We don't have much action. It's the NFL Crunch Time channel in Discord if you can find it.
Right, we're under the live stream chat under the featured tabs. So there's a couple questions rolling in, Tuttle. Just so you're in the right place. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, so we're good. All right. FanDuel GPP. We'll start with you, Keith. Miami NYG run back. NY Jet run back, Michael Carter or a pass catch? I guess, would you play Michael Carter or anybody else from the Jets, or is there a gap there?
It's Michael Carter if you had to do one. I don't think you necessarily have to do a run back. The Jets are bad.
Fair enough. Tuttle, this one's geared to you specifically. FanDuel cash, Jeff Wilson or Zeke?
Yeah, Zeke.
Okay. Noto says be nice to the Outlaw Tour. It was my favorite research looking at these like janky websites to see where these guys went to college. So I'm with you. I like the Outlaw Tour. Another one for Tuttle. Would you play Lazard or just MVS and DeGuara?
Yeah, you can definitely play Lazard, and he'll be the lowest owned of the bunch. Or, well, he'll be lower owned than MVS, and maybe not DeGuara. But, yes, you can play Lazard.
Okay. Keith, Zeke and Ertz or Wilson and Pitts for FanDuel cash?
On FanDuel, it's Zeke and Ertz.
Okay. DK cash, Tuttle, O'Shaughnessy, Cooks, Jags, or Gazicki, Mike, Davis, and the Bills D?
I think that's Gabe Davis, and
Yes.
that would be the one for me.
Okay, Gabe Davis. I'm from Pennsylvania. After watching Penn State football, you think I'd be able to pronounce Big Mike's name right. Let's see. DK Cash, Keith, Kyler and Gaskin, or Dak and Najee Harris?
Yeah, I was landing in that same spot myself. I think it's Dak and Najee. It's the one I slightly prefer. Very close, though.
Okay. Tuttle, FanDuel GPP, Cordell Patterson and George Kittle, or Najee Harris and Kyle Pitts?
I kind of like the first one there. Patterson's not going to be owned, but we know what he can do. So, yeah, I like the first one.
Agreed. All right, Keith. DK Cash, Tua, Cole Beasley, and Buffalo defense, or Dak, Davis, and Miami defense?
The first one.
Okay, Tua combo. FanDuel GPP, favorite contrarian quarterback. Either one of you guys, go for it. It's 12:56, so we'll just get these last couple in here. Contrarian quarterback for FanDuel. Any thoughts, fellas?
Rodgers for me.
I like Rodgers. I don't mind Garoppolo as well. I mean, if we're playing Kittle and Debo, we like Ayuk too. Garoppolo, I like as a deep, large field tournament.
Large field GPP, favorite running back. Anybody not owned that's in your wheelhouse, fellas?
Mixon is my favorite one.
I mentioned James Conner too. I think he's plausible. Tuttle, I don't know if you have anything or if you want to get into this. Why is Najee chalk versus number 2 rushing defense, Tennessee? Titans have a bad passing defense. Najee is good out of the backfield too. And Keith, you mentioned he doesn't come off the field. Is that a big factor here?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And he's very involved in that passing game too. So just the role and not much else to spend up for.
Okay. Mark, I think the 49ers stacks in play for large field GPPs. I think these guys would probably feel the same way. I think there's quarterbacks with much safer floors for smaller stuff. DK Cash, Tuttle, I'll throw it over to you. Carter and Nassim or Javonte Williams and Connor? I don't know. Who's Nassim? Am I missing something? Hold on, let's see here. Nassim.
It must be Najee.
Yeah.
Carter. I would go Carter and Najee.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. FanDuel single entry, 2v2. Keith, Josh Allen and Gabriel Davis, or Dak and Deontay Johnson?
I mean, if you have a stacking partner with Dak, I would prefer that side of it, but I don't think I would play Dak naked.
Okay. Tuttle, over to you. DK Cash, Tua and Brandon Cooks, or Dak and Christian Kirk?
Very slightly the Dak side.
Okay, 12:58, guys. Start locking them in. Hit those submit buttons. Keith, GPP, Zeke, Pollard, Lamb? Question mark. I guess any interest in the Cowboys? Is Pollard in or out today? Pollard's out, right?
No, he's
Pollard's
back.
in, but expected to be limited.
Okay, so Pollard's really not in my equation. I was just expecting him to not be involved, really.
Yeah, with Pollard limited and Zeke banged up, I like the Dallas passing game quite a bit. So Lamb is of those three. Lamb is the one I have the most exposure to.
He's carrying the ownership on FanDuel. I don't mind going Cooper if you're feeling a little froggy here. Cooper, I think he looks passing the eye test anyway to me. So I think that's interesting. 12:58, guys. Lock them in. Thanks for sticking with us here on Crunch Time. If there's any last minute questions, we'll get to them. I see some typing in the chat. Devin, you got any hot takes here? Yeah, it was Najee. Okay, got you. Devin, any hot takes for these games?
I'm going with the classic I've watched football all season take of Jets suck, Lions suck. So going for an Arizona smash and let's see, Miami smash.
Okay, Miami or Buffalo defense? At the buzzer, guys. Last question. Buffalo. Got it. 12:59. And Devin, love the hot takes there as always. Looks like the Nets are canceling their next couple of NBA games. So if there's no games, we won't have a crunch time, but I'm sure you'll see some updates from us at RG or someone on Twitter. We'll be letting you know what's going on. You know what? We made it into almost January without a pause to the season, but do you guys think it's in the cards for NBA to take some kind of hiatus here?
I think it makes sense to either figure out different protocols or take a pause, because I don't think anything's going to lighten up here anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is personally, but we'll see what happens. But we have NFL football. 1 p.m. is locked. Thanks for tuning in and sticking with us. Regardless, we'll be Keith and I will be back for the NFL Showdown show tonight. So we do have some more action. And if there's no NBA, if there's no NBA, I would reserve those contests early, because everybody's going to be going to play some Showdown tonight. So anything else, fellas, or are we heading out of here?
That's it. That's it for me. Yep.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap for Devin working the boards, and for Dan and Keith, I'm Justin. Good luck, everybody, and thanks.